All right, we're firing on all cylinders here. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. How's married life treating you?
Good. A cousin of mine I spoke to the other day asked me that, and I said it's good. You know, Alexa and I fell into our relationship routine pretty quickly into dating, and so not much has changed. One of those kind of situations.
Were you
Um,
living together before you got married?
Dude, 2 weeks into knowing each other, she moved in.
Oh,
Now she had her apartment still, essentially moved in, I should say. She was basically living with me, and 6 months in, she got rid of her apartment downtown, which she loved, and that's how I knew she was really committed because she loved that apartment. She loved being able to go get coffee or go to a shop. She hated the idea of moving to the boring little place where I am in San Diego, but she did it. And so, but we were 1 month in, we're at Costco shopping like an old married couple in hindsight, right? But we're doing our thing, and this older gentleman at the cashier says, "When are you gonna put a ring on that, son?" And I'm like, "Sir, it's been a month. Give me a break." But it was a quick, and we knew, and we talked about it early on, and so we knew the trajectory. And so married life is amazing. It was truly the best weekend, Herb. November 2nd, we got married, and it's just been great, man. And I'm extremely excited and grateful to say that we finally settled upon our honeymoon. It's gonna be Sicily, 2 weeks in Sicily. So lucky guy right here.
I have been there. I have been there. It is a delightful place. Have you been?
No, I've not been to Europe, believe it or not.
Get out of here. You've never been to
I
Europe?
know,
Better,
I
you
know, I
better
know.
hurry
She's
up
gonna
before it
take me all
turns
the way
into.
around.
Well, if you don't do it soon, it's going to turn into Syria. So, I'm just saying.
That's an interesting point. You know, did I miss the boat? Yeah, but we decided
No, you didn't miss the
ultimately to
boat.
stay in
Of all the
Sicily for two
countries you
weeks.
could go to in Western Europe, of all the countries you could go to, Italy is probably the best because they have an extremely happy American. The government's very pro-American as opposed to other places in Europe at
Right.
this time.
True, true. Just that alone, right.
Yeah,
Amazing. So, how are
I was
you?
just talking just before we came on. I was just talking to a friend of mine who is a retired physician from Philadelphia, and he and his wife are in a small village in Mexico. I'm not going to say which one, but it's on the Yucatan, and they're down there enjoying themselves. And they have a place down there that every year they rent the same place, and they normally go down. And there are a lot of other Americans, and they're down there now. And there are none. There are Belgians, and there are Canadians, and there are Swedes, and there are people from other places in the world, but no Americans. Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So, man, we could weave that into the narrative, I'm sure. You could tell me ultimately what's going on, how's our standing in the world. So much to catch up on, including what you've got going on, the very exciting news. So, first, tell me how you're doing.
I'm doing great. I'll catch up on my news. I'm running for
Yeah.
Congress.
Yeah.
So I filed my papers with the FEC and the state of Arizona and the county that I live in and all that kind of good stuff. If anyone wants to go to the website, it's up. We're putting the finishing touches on it. It's working. It's Herby Kay, Herby. I don't use an IE, HerbyKay for the number 4 Congress.com. Herby Kay for Congress.com. And I'm running as a libertarian, believe it or not. And I'm running in Arizona's District 4. And, I know this is going to sound bizarre, but I'm playing to win. And I understand. I'm not an idiot. I understand what the odds are for a libertarian to win this race. And we'll see what comes of it. But the district that I'm running in is the same district that Arizona State University's in, which is Tempe, Mesa, and parts of Chandler, which are suburbs of Phoenix to the south and the east of Phoenix. And like all university dominated areas, it's very liberal, very left wing. And my thought is running as a libertarian within the district was number one, I think there are a lot of Democrats who are completely repulsed by the progressive wing of the party. I think there are a lot of old school. When I say old school, I don't mean by age. I mean traditional Democrats who are left of center and believe in a social safety net and believe and are pro-choice, let's say, and believe in the rights of the working man, so on and so forth. Right, but they're not. Trump nauseates them. To be honest, they're just so
Not me.
nauseated by Trump.
Yeah, that's not quite me, but many of
I
them,
know, I
yes.
understand,
But they're
but there are a
yeah.
lot of Democrats, and so they'll never vote Republican. So the Democrats consider this a safe seat. So my plan is to pick off
Mhm.
disaffected Republicans whom Trump nauseates, and there are plenty of those, and pick up disaffected Democrats who Trump nauseates, and there are plenty who have no other place to go. Their own party is progressivism is radical feminism with a different name gone wild. That's what progressivism is, and it's completely repulsed an enormous part. I would say two-thirds or more of the country want to vomit blood every time they hear some of these things. Like, for example,
I'm a man.
the gender reassignment of children. What's that?
I'm a man. Remember those commercials?
Oh yeah, it's every now and then.
But you were
the
saying
boomer that
gender reassignment. You were saying gender reassignment for children.
it's so repulsive to a lot of Democrats. I'm sure they're probably afraid to say it out loud in cocktail parties or when they're over at friends' houses that are lefty. But privately, they're repulsed. But who are they going to vote for? Donald Trump, and they hate him. And I think they're a little deranged with it, but they do hate him.
Yeah,
and
a lot of those people.
I want to give them a place to go, so
that's interesting.
What makes plus this is going to be about a 50-50 Congress. Give or take a little bit, it'll be very close to 50-50, which means that my vote as a libertarian will be extremely valuable to both parties, and I will use that to leverage benefit for my district. So not only will am I running to provide alternatives,
right?
My pitch is very simple. I'll be more powerful. The guy that I'm running against, the Democrat, is a guy named Greg Stanton, and I've never met him. I'm sure he's a nice guy.
I'm sure he's a piece of shit. No, I'm kidding.
No, he really isn't.
I don't know.
I don't know enough about him that I would ever call him that, and I'm tired of that nonsense. I'll tell you what he is. He's a backbencher. He was the mayor of Phoenix, and then he became the congressman from this safe Democratic district, and he's done nothing. He's a man of pleasant, like most politicians, pleasant banter, but no accomplishment whatsoever. No big bills, no big backing. He's reliable Democratic vote. If you go to his website, it's just a lot of fluffy nothing. And I don't mean that to be, again, pejorative. It's how they all are. None of them want to be pinned down. So if you go to my website, I'm exceptionally specific. So on the website is a link to my book, A Radical Reset, which is on Amazon, and it's very inexpensive. You can pick it up, and I have the Amazon link through the website. When I say very inexpensive on Kindle, I think it's 99 cents. I mean, I'm not trying to make money on the book. I'm simply trying to disseminate it. And in A Radical Reset, the book are specific policies, not, gee, I'm for the working man. How am I for the working man? How am I going to end inflation? How would I, reduce taxation? How would I get rid of the national debt? How would I fix the welfare state? How would I restore the nuclear family? How would I deal with climate change? How would I deal with international affairs? It's all in there in detail. Okay, so that this isn't fluff, and it's all very different from what people are used to. Then it introduces the idea that you and I have talked about before, which is my idea for anti-politism, which I consider vitally necessary. What I think is going to happen, and I'll just to catch up, people have never heard me before, and you're going to know I'm going to say this. I think that the SHTF moment is going to come sooner rather than later.
You think it's about to hit the fan, and you acknowledge every time we've spoken, hey, hasn't happened yet, but you're still your message is consistently, Brian, look at the graphs, look at the charts, big picture, it's coming. Economic crisis.
Look, something's wrong. I know you do. I know that everybody that listens to this later is going to know that something's wrong. Something's wrong. You can't really put your finger on it, but the country's coming apart. Tribalism is everywhere. The immigration issue is
no question about that.
Clear. And the two major parties are they're uncooperative with each other. Wouldn't begin to describe it. They both can't wait to prosecute the other using the government as a tool of political destruction. People have lost faith in institutions. The fraud.
So Trump, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say, I think the issue of this year, if I had to say what's going to be the overarching issue of this campaign and of the upcoming congressional elections, if the SHTF moment doesn't come before then, the other issue that'll be the biggest by far is fraud. It's going to be fraud. The fraud is what's going on in Minnesota, fraud-wise, and I believe that this whole ICE thing is. Well, we can discuss that. I'll get into that.
Okay. Let me start off by asking you a question. What's your assessment of Trump so far? I know you are a reasonable, principled libertarian. It's so exciting that you're taking first of all, that you've joined me. This is probably your 12th appearance on my podcast. I've gotten to know you, and we've talked about your book, A Radical Reset, and we've talked about a lot of your policies. And it's incredible that you're turning that into action, and I'm so excited for you. So I know your disposition on Trump generally is he really kind of impressed you in the last election. Election, and you were hopeful, cautiously optimistic. He impressed you. What's your assessment? Is he not transformative enough to avoid the big catastrophe? What's yours? Is he nauseating? Do you find him nauseating?
Sometimes. So Trump to me is a very complicated figure. So I was talking to, I'm doing a podcast next week with someone in San Francisco. I forget the name of the podcast. It's a pretty good one, I think. But anyway, long story short, we were talking about this, and I said, it's not as easy as I love him and I hate him. There are things about him I love, and there are things about him I hate. Like I'll start with nauseating. When Rob Reiner died, and this is not a governmental issue, but when Rob Reiner died, his response was nauseating. And I was embarrassed by it.
That's
Look,
fair.
you have to have a little.
Two things are fair. You are correct. I agree with you. What's also true is that Rob Reiner was no random. He was a general in the anti-Trump army. Now, we know that. But nonetheless, yes, you would hope that your president would have a little more grace on the day of murder or within the 24 hours of the horrific, biblical, nightmarish murder, right? That you would have a little more grace. Now, but there was some grace and there was some heart in it. There was a little bit. It wasn't right, and we wanted better. Yeah, go ahead.
He made it all about Trump. He made it all about Trump. He had to reset. Look, what Rob Reiner experienced, I can't even imagine how horrific that had to be. I just can't even imagine it.
Right.
And then, look, Rob Reiner was a man of great accomplishment, like Donald Trump, before either one of them got involved in politics. One of my favorite movies to this day will always be one of my favorite movies. It's a movie I share with my children as a favorite movie, is The Princess Bride,
of course,
which I think is
the greatest of all time.
I think one of the greatest of all time. And he made plenty of others. A Few Good Men.
But if he had only made just that one, even.
And that it was a masterpiece. I also enjoyed him on the old All in the Family show, which you weren't even born, but he was good in that role. And people are complicated and they're not black and white. And I just don't. And I think when a man dies, when people die a horrific death, what strikes me is we treated Nazi generals with more grace than Trump treated Rob Reiner's death.
You're so right. Actually, you're so right. And do you recall James Woods? Actor James Woods, did you see his spot on Fox when he gave that incredible tribute? If you didn't, check it out, Google it. James Woods gave a beautiful tribute to Rob Reiner because they were tight and beyond politics, so it was really nice. Yeah.
Can I tell you a funny James Woods story? This is one of these small. This has nothing to do with. We're not in a time limit, so I'm just gonna lay it on you. So I happened to have dinner with James Woods. Just three of us, myself, my publicist at the time. This is back in the 90s when I wrote my bestseller.
Yeah,
and I was on
what
tour.
Was it? How to get stinking rich and still have time to fuck
How to get filthy, stinking rich and still get and still come home to great sex, or still have time for great sex. Yeah, it was a funny book. It was a funny book. But to make a long story short, I met him. My publicist was also his publicist, and so he set up. And he thought we would enjoy each other's company, so we had a dinner in an Italian restaurant in New York, in Manhattan. We were in Manhattan. And so we're sitting in the restaurant, and I have to tell you, two things struck me about James Wood. One is, at the time, and it might be different now, he had no permanent address. He only lived in hotels. He kept all of his personal possessions, including all of his Emmys and everything else, in a storage container. It's a true story. And he lived out of hotels. He was a bachelor, confirmed bachelor. At the time, I have no idea what his status is now. I don't keep up on him, but. This was at the time. This was around 2000. Let's call it roughly 2000. And the other thing was, he was not a young man then, and he had lost the context of the story was his best friend had stopped talking to him because he began sleeping with his best friend's daughter, who was a young girl. And I said to him, and this is why James Woods, if he even remembers me, will hate me. I said, if that was my daughter, I'd have stabbed you in the throat.
Oh shit! Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Right on.
I told him, you are too old to be fooling around with
Wow.
20-year-old girls, let alone your best friend's daughter. What is wrong? And I told him this to his face. I said to him, what's wrong with you? And let's just say James Woods and I, on a personal level, if he even remembers me, because I'm sure I'm one out of 60 million dinners. But I said right to his face, I'd have stabbed you in your throat.
I'm sure he would remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the rest of the dinner didn't go well. Let's just say now, as a person, I've seen a lot of things he said, and he says things I agree with and disagree with. But he's more of a MAGA guy. But anyway, that's my James Wood. That's my small world James Wood story. I actually met him, had dinner with him, and found him repugnant. But that was on
love it.
But that was on a personal level. That the public person and the private person are two different things.
Sure. Yeah. The character and the character we play on X perhaps is even a third thing. Who knows? So, what are the good things about Trump?
I think his foreign policy is he's either a genius or a madman, and I'm leaning towards genius. And it's all interconnected. He's playing the game in such a disruptive way. And first of all, you have to remember that the press today is very lazy. Let's forget left or right. Let's forget they're liberal or conservative. They've become lazy. They've become lazy because you can go online and pick up everything you want to know about your story without ever leaving your apartment or your home. And you can use AI now to help write the story. So it's a very lazy press. Okay. And it'll become increasingly so. And so when you have a very lazy press, they describe things very superficially and always from the bias of whatever the publication or the site is that they're reporting from.
So it's easy to play them.
So, for example, this Greenland thing. Okay, now when I first heard about the Greenland thing, my initial reaction is, what the fuck? Okay, it was like, why are we picking a fight with the Danish of all the people?
And I need to get your
world?
opinion on Venezuela too, but go on.
I'll get there. This is actually going to all be part of the same thing. I think this is all part of the same picture. In fact, this all links to Venezuela. Greenland, Venezuela, what went on this week at Davos. If Trump is playing the game I think he is, then he's a genius, and he's playing chess, not checkers. An analogy I use a lot. You've heard me use it before. Here's the chess game. So Trump wants to mainstream. Okay, first of all, you have to go back. You have to read his intelligence assessment from November of last year. So the 2025 intelligence assessment, if you read it, which I don't think 2 out of 2,000 reporters have actually read it, and it's not long. It's not.
It wasn't long. Very readable.
It's not a doctoral dissertation, but it's clear that he wants to do business. Trump, in the end, is transactional. And Trump wants to bring Russia and China back into the world order on America's terms. Trump believes in Pax Americana. Okay, so which basically
means, for us who don't know, if people don't know what that means,
well, there used to be a Pax Romana. Like the Roman Empire kept the peace in the world as it was known at that time for 1,000 years. He believes America's role is to keep the peace in our world, and we're better off for it, but not the way we've been doing it, which has been retarded. Okay, so what he's doing is he's realigning the world order. Okay, so, and again, for the people who don't know me, I was a Russian linguist and analyst at the National Security Agency. It's one of my many careers. So, and I speak fluent Russian, and so I'm better versed on a lot of this stuff than the average person would be. But again, my opinions work exactly what you're paying for. Take it or leave it. So here's what I think Trump is doing. So he looks at the world, and this whole thing in Ukraine, I think he's correct, was entirely avoidable. Putin's decision to go into Ukraine was an instigated decision. You have to look at everything that was taking place at the time and how Biden was instigating this whole. Really, Biden or whoever was governing in his name, who we may or may not know. I don't believe Joe Biden knew what the hell was going on. I'm not saying this. I'm not a Republican, but he was clearly senile. The only people who don't use the word senile are rabid Democrats. Everybody else knew, really almost from the beginning, the guy was senile. The hope was somehow he was privately better than he was in public, but that's not true. Anyone who's had an elderly person in their family that's losing their marbles knows that just doesn't happen. Now they have good days and bad days. There were days when Biden looked like he was almost there, but as a president, you don't get to pick. You know, when the red
Yeah.
button
3
needs to be
a.m.
pressed,
phone call.
like
Oh,
it
fuck.
doesn't wait for like I'm good between 10 and 4. It's like that's not the way it operates. So that was it. Let me just say he should have been removed under the 25th Amendment. Period.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that so much could have been different. So yes, understood.
Well, we don't want to play what if, could have, because then Kamala Harris would have been president. She is just plain stupid.
Right.
And
Here we are.
the adjective, the
Well,
adjective
here
of
we
Kamala
are.
Harris
So tell me
is
back
stupid.
to Greenland.
Okay,
And
so Trump wants to bring Russia and China back into the world economy. He wants to get rid of the sanctions that are on them. He wants to bring them back in the world economy, but he wants to bring them back on our terms because he feels, and correctly so, that on the trade front in particular, and he sees this as all connected, he sees that money and global politics are intertwined irrevocably. Okay. He thinks that we've been taken advantage of by the Chinese, which is, I think, I don't see the case to make against it. I think the Chinese did take advantage of us in trade for a long, long time. And what presidents, Democrat and Republican, and it ended up in a now. I think the trade deficit number itself is a meaningless number, to be perfectly honest with you. But when I say the kind of jobs we lost were not just grunt jobs, we lost a lot of good jobs. We lost a lot of American manufacturing capacity. We lost a lot to the Chinese. I won't get into it. But on the other hand, the Chinese, we have no reason to be arguing. This isn't the 19th century. Wars over land aren't going to ever happen again. Land is a meaningless resource. It used to be everything, and now it means next to nothing. Because prior to the industrial age, 80% of the population of every country spent all their time growing the food for the 100%. Agriculture was very ineffective before oil and gas was discovered and machines were made and the industrial age. Now it's less than 1% of the population feeds we grow enough food in our country to feed the whole world. The whole reason that the whole world is eating is politics, not supply. And the supply is provided by the productivity provided by technology and the industrial age. And so we're not going to have any more wars in Europe, and we're not going to have any more wars in China, and we're not going to have any more Vietnam wars because land means nothing.
By the way, if I could just put a button and add real quick and say what my primary interest at this point is the impact of technology on politics. And Elon Musk going from libertarian economic spouting libertarian economist to we're going to have a high abundance society. And do those rules not apply in a society where there's insane abundance? Just that thought alone is interesting.
The problem in the end is politics, which is why anti-politism is the answer. But let me finish on Trump, and then I'll move to that. So anyway, so Trump wants to bring Russia and China back into the fold. He has a good relationship with Xi. He has a good relationship with Putin. But both Putin and Xi have backed themselves into corners by their own mistakes. Putin attacking Ukraine was what I would call a hinge moment. It was one of those decisions that once you make it, you can't unmake it. It's not unlike if Hitler, not to use this, in any positive way, but if Hitler would have stopped at reunifying Germany and Austria, and getting back to Sudetenland and the Rhineland and all the other stuff, and it stopped right there, he'd have gone down in history as the greatest German leader since Frederick the Great. Right. And he wouldn't have, if he didn't take Poland, there wouldn't have been death camps. If there wouldn't have been death camps, there wouldn't have been a Holocaust. And without a Holocaust, he would still have been a rabid anti-Semite. But there's a difference between a rabid anti-Semite, like let's say Tucker Carlson, and a Nazi.
Adolf Hitler of history.
Right. Carlson's an anti-Semite. Hitler's a Nazi. That's two completely different. I don't think Tucker Carlson wants to murder the Jews. Okay, that's a very different. Let's be very clear on that. People who throw that Nazi word around like candy or don't appreciate what they're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, fair. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, it's I don't like Tucker Carlson, but I don't think he's a Nazi. So anyway, having said that, so Putin's in a desperate situation. The reason Putin hasn't made a deal yet is because once he invaded Ukraine, he destroyed his economy. He underestimated the reaction of the world economy. He underestimated the depth of the damage. And he also thought he was going to win in 3 days. He thought he was going to roll in. He thought the Ukrainians were going to lay down, just like when he took Crimea, and he thought that was going to be it. He was not prepared for what he got. And I think he was lied to by his own advisors. The Russian military was in terrible shape. It's still in terrible shape because they can't resupply it. And now they've killed all their young men. Okay, and that's a whole generation of workers and productive workers that
So you
aren't going to
don't buy
lose.
this argument that they've got the raw numbers to just win in the long?
No, that's nonsense. Okay, Russia. First of all, every Russian of that age, of military age, that didn't want to be involved left the country. Okay, you can find plenty of them here in the United States. As I told you, I speak Russian. I run into Russians all the time, who have left the country in the last couple of years because they didn't want to be drafted. And I talked to them in Russian. And that's they love Russia. They'll go back tomorrow,
Mhm.
but they just have no
Mhm.
desire to end up fighting their cousins in Ukraine, which is how they view the Ukrainians. Okay, and the Ukrainians, you know, their hands are not completely clean. But let's not get into the. I believe
Right.
that Jared Kushner and Steve
Wickoff.
whatever Witkoff are really good negotiators. I mean,
Yeah,
like A plus.
unbelievable.
So I'm sure that they're working on a good on a deal to get Putin out.
So
Okay, to
then what
get
was, the Chinese leader's mistakes? Tell me she's mistakes and then tie it back to Greenland and Venezuela.
okay. So a lot of people, like if you go on X right now, you'll see a lot of particularly young people who are enamored of socialism, showing pictures of Chinese skylines and saying this is what this is what socialism built. That's not what socialism built. Okay, I'm sure you've seen these memes.
Mm,
That is what Deng Xiaoping built when, after Mao died, he took over and opened up the economy and turned China for a brief period of time into a giant Hong Kong. And China boomed. And then Deng died, and then the old guard took back over, headed by Xi. And Xi has conducted a purge from the center, and he's consolidated power. He's moved. The state has taken over every industry it can take over, and it's taken a majority controlling interest even in companies that look like they're private. In other words, he set up a fascist state. That's what fascism is. Fascism is communism that looks like capitalism. You still have private businesses, and they look like they're private, but they're really doing the bidding of the government. And in fact, all the control is from the center. That's the only difference between
right.
between fascism and communism. Okay, and
Mhm.
so what she has done is create China as a fascist state. And like all centrally controlled states, it's in desperate trouble. It's
Mm.
our debt is 38 trillion, which is 135% of GDP. Their debt, as best as we can figure it, since they lie, since they don't have a free press, they understate their own failures because nobody's going to double check them. One of the things that people don't appreciate about a free press is they keep the government honest. If they come out with completely bullshit numbers, somebody's going to go digging for what the real number is. That will not happen in China. So we have to
Right.
extrapolate from
Right.
it. And once you start lying on your
Mm.
economic numbers, then you have to maintain that lie. And the lie gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you lie to cover up the
Next
lie
thing
you
you know, you
told,
got
to
a house
cover
of
up the last
cards.
lie you told. What's that?
Next thing you know, you got a house of cards.
Right. And that's what China is, a giant house of cards. Plus, they have the worst population collapse in the history of the planet. No country has ever had a demographic collapse like China is experiencing right now. For the last 4 years, more people have been dying in China than have been born in China. And it looks like they overcounted their population to begin with by about 200 million. And 200
Mm.
million is a lot. And then when you add to that, they have no one coming in to buy. In other words, if you build a lot of real estate, let's say, let's use an American example, someone has to be able to buy that house when you sell it. There has to be a buyer.
Yep.
But if you have no one coming up underneath, if you have bad demographics, there's nobody to buy the supply, and then prices collapse and you have a depression. I'm being simplistic, but
Mhm.
China is, by 2030, there won't be China. I'm just going to tell you that right now. China's going to break apart. Which, by the way, if you know the history of China, is not that unusual in Chinese history. And
Mm.
the Qin and the other, and Mongolia, and all, they're all going to break apart. And Xi at this point knows that. And what
Mm.
he's doing is he's playing for time to save the party. He's not
Mm.
particularly interested in the Chinese people per se. He's interested in the rule of the Chinese Communist Party, which is, remember, China is a kleptocracy disguised as a government. Okay, everyone's stealing, and they're stealing at massive levels. And I mean, our theft is bad. Their theft is off the scale. And it's irrecoverable. So the question, but what we don't want to do, and Trump knows this, but
Mm.
if we can reintegrate China back into the world economy, when the collapse comes, it'll have far less ramifications than if we make an enemy out of them. And it just comes as a surprise to us and then causes all kinds of problems because, at least at this moment, the world's
Mm.
manufacturing chain does run through China still.
Mm.
Okay, because basically greed overwhelmed good sense, and millions of companies around the world, not just American, their supply chains run through China. Okay,
Okay.
and they're trying to get out of there as fast as they can. There's a lot of divestment going on, but that takes many, many years, and you don't know when the bad thing happens. So Trump is trying to improve the security situation, and when it comes to China, revolves on Taiwan. And Taiwan, Trump has made it clear, again, if you read the intelligence assessment and other things he said, that he's willing to concede that Taiwan is part of China if China will promise that when they take over sovereignty of Taiwan, they won't do to it what they did to Hong Kong. In other words, if Taiwan can maintain, kind of like Puerto Rico maintains in the United States, and does its own thing with its own governor and makes its own rules, and they can be part of, but the Chinese don't come in there and do what they did in Hong Kong, which is suppress all free expression and
They shut
ruin
down all the newspapers, passed that sedition law.
So what Trump has said is we'll defend Taiwan, but only now. If the Chinese play ball with us, we'll play ball with the Chinese on Taiwan. Okay, that's part of the game. And China doesn't have very much in the way of natural resources, and they have to buy all their oil overseas. And part of that oil that they buy comes from Venezuela. And by partnering with Venezuela, they were able to also use Venezuelan oil to some extent as leverage to get people. What the Chinese want to do right now, because of the relationship we have with them, is, and not just the Chinese, the Russians, the Brazilians, the Indians, the BRICS countries, the South Africa, and a bunch of other countries that have signed on to it, is they want to replace the dollar as the global currency, particularly to trade oil. Oil is at the core of all of this. Okay, if we lose the dollar as the principal international currency that trades oil, then this entire Ponzi scheme we've been running to maintain a national debt of over 100% of GDP, which historically is unsustainable. There's never been a country that didn't end up in a hyperinflation when their debt went over 100% of GDP. Historically, we would be the first country to ever pull it off. And all the other countries that are doing it right now, the whole world is in a terrible position because of the debt. And if we can somehow get out of it with as little pain as possible, Trump sees this coming, and he's trying to get America out of it, less dependent on foreign supply chains, so that when the shit hits the fan, we're in a better position. And by taking Chavez out of Venezuela and taking control of the Venezuelan oil, he has already said to the Russians and Chinese explicitly, you can look this up, we'll continue to sell you oil. Don't worry, we're going to continue to sell you oil, but you're going to have to talk to us. We're in a whole different position now. It's given him leverage. That's why we took it. He took it to push the Russians into a settlement on Ukraine, and to push the Chinese into a settlement on Taiwan. Believe it or not, Venezuela is the linchpin of those two things. Okay, because Venezuela is supplying, Venezuelan oil is down to a trickle, frankly, but what oil they have is going also to Cuba. Now, as part of the Monroe Doctrine, I know I'm going all over the place, but President Monroe declared, the fourth president of the United States, the Monroe, or was he the fifth? Anyway, he declared the Monroe Doctrine, which said no foreign power will be allowed to operate in the Western Hemisphere. I'm being simplistic, but that's what I'm saying. And every president since him has tried to maintain that until we got to Kennedy, which allowed, the Russians into Cuba, and the rest was, a mistake. So Russia's saying, I'm sorry. Trump is saying, that was a Freudian slip. Trump is saying, we're going to bring Cuba down as a result of taking Venezuela, because 100% of Cuba's money has been coming from Venezuela, and now that's been cut off. So Cuba will collapse at some point in the next year. That's right. What I think is going to happen is he's too smart to put troops on the ground in Venezuela. I have to give him points for wisdom in the way that we took out Maduro, but we didn't collapse the government when we could have.
Right.
Because he learned the lesson of Iraq, which is don't collapse something unless you've got something to fill the void afterwards. It's the same reason that he didn't attack Iran this last time. Don't cause a collapse when you don't understand what's going to take the place of it. And what we did, we thought when we went to Iraq and Afghanistan that we were going to be welcomed as liberators and everything was going to be great. And Trump opposed it then, and he's very consistent. He opposes it now. He's using enormous. Venezuela also demonstrated both to the Iranians and the Russians and the Chinese military capabilities that they didn't know the United States had.
Right. So linchpin strategy, message sent, and also
now Greenland. Okay. Now Greenland, by making a hinged decision in Ukraine, Putin, in making that hinged decision, has very little room to back out. And he's made it clear that if he starts to lose, if the Ukrainians won't make peace and the Europeans won't play ball, and he starts to lose, he has made it explicit that he's not against using nuclear weapons. Okay, and we've put him into a very dangerous position of making that could be his only way out if he doesn't negotiate a deal with us. Consequently, that puts us in the line of fire. That affects American security interests in the Western Hemisphere. And the shortest missile route is over the poles and down into our country, which makes Greenland vitally important. Now, under the agreement we've had with Greenland since 1951, we could put up anything we want, subject to the approval of the Danish Parliament. The deal that Trump just got, and the reason he's not going to do the tariffs in Europe is now we're going to have that exact same permission to do anything we want, anytime we want, and we don't have to ask the Danish Parliament. Trump doesn't want to have a European Parliament in a position to block America acting in its own security interest. He's not interested in taking over Greenland. He's interested in putting on what he calls the Golden Dome, which is a very good idea, a missile shield over the United States. And in order to do that, he needs Greenland. And in order to do that, he doesn't want the EU or any other meddling Western European who has their head up their ass to get in his way when he's trying to protect the people of the United States.
So was there a material gain? I know the deal's not done yet, but like, do you sense that there was a material gain from what the status quo was?
He got exactly what he wanted to begin with. Trump always plays it this way. First, he comes out with ridiculous demands. He's done this before. He comes out with ridiculous demands. Remember 100% tariffs on this and 50%. And then when people say, Trump always chickens out, that's bullshit. This is just how Trump negotiates. He comes out with a ridiculous demand. Then the other side freaks out. Then he lets them make some kind of offer to him, and then he gets what he really wants anyway.
Yeah, and look, the beauty is you could really want the ridiculous demand, and no one will ever know. If it doesn't work out, so it's clearly routine.
I think that Venezuela, Greenland, what's gone on in Davos, what's going on in the Asian
what do you think about Davos?
Are all connected, and I think his foreign policy and the Middle East. Let's not forget the Middle East. On top of everything else, Trump it's amazing. The cleanup of Syria is going to join the Abraham Accords and become friends with Israel. And the guy who's leading it used to be a jihadist, for Christ's sake, and they're all playing ball because they're afraid of Trump and because he's demonstrated clearly he's not afraid to use force. Now, he didn't intervene in this Iranian situation for the reason I said. Everyone thought the Shah's going to come back. Small world, like James Wood. I've met that Shah, believe it or not.
Right.
Believe it or not, I was happened to be at NSA when the Shah fell.
Where? Oh, National Security Agency.
I was at NSA when the Shah fell, and his son was going to school at Georgetown. If I remember right, this could be wrong about where he was going to school, but I believe he was going to school at Georgetown. He was a cadet. He was learning to fly, I believe, with our Air Force, and I met him at a Georgetown bar. I just ran into him drinking. I know that sounds stupid, but
what were you guys drinking?
Beer. I mean, it was just it's not like he's my buddy. I just happened to run into him. He was in those days. He was very slim and nice looking guy, and girls loved him, and everyone knew he was raised a Shah, and all that kind of crap. But
he was the shit.
You've
predicted before. You've told me before. You think he's clearly been waiting in exile, government in exile. So what's happening?
He has to govern in exile, but here's the thing: what people don't understand, and this is why Trump is wise. Iran is only half Persian. People think of Iran as Persia. Iran is Persia, but it's only half Persian. The other half are a mix of all kinds of other ethnicities. There are Kurds. And religion, Zoroastrianism. Baha'i is the headquarters of Baha'i is in Iran. It's a very diverse population. There's Christians, there's Jews. It's a very diverse population, and we don't know who supports who and who supports what. And we don't really understand. And Shia Muslims are more dangerous than Sunni Muslims, which are our Saudi friends and our UAE friends and people like that. The Shiites are essentially a death cult. And I know that's not politically correct, but that's what it is. And when you're dealing with people who believe in a death cult, that's a very dangerous thing. And he's right to be extremely cautious about getting involved with these people. Which brings up a separate issue: is Islam compatible with Western culture, which is another discussion. But
it's the primary discussion on X. So say a few words on it.
Islam is not compatible with Western culture. So it is not a coincidence that the Christian world is where all the good things have happened historically in terms of how people live. Virtually every good thing that people count on in their lives, from air conditioning to cars, to good medicine that keeps us alive twice as long as we used to, and all these other things. These are all the byproducts of Western civilization. And Western civilization could only have happened in the Christian world because Jesus said something. I know it's going to sound like I'm getting religious, but and I forget what, I think it's in Matthew. But anyway.
And you're an atheist Jew, right?
Yeah, I'm an atheist Jew. But listen, that doesn't mean I think Jesus was a moron. So Jesus said, basically, and my Christian friends, I'm paraphrasing this. I'm not good at biblical quoting, but render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God what is God's. I'm paraphrasing. You've heard the quote. I'm sure everyone has.
Sure.
That's the most important quote in history. That is the single most important sentence ever uttered by a major figure in history, period. Because it recognizes that there are other religions and other people. So if you
to me, it recognizes that there is a place for politics and there's a place for religion.
But it's evolved, and Christianity is far from perfect. I mean, as a Jew, I know that the Inquisition. There's lots of things. But the truth is, it acknowledged that there are other people and other religions, and the government itself separate from Islam. You can have one without the other, or separate from Christianity. Now,
totally.
Islam,
okay, I'm with you. Got it.
Okay, if you read the Quran,
it's all one.
Which is a tough read. It's a tough read. I'm just telling you. I've done it. It's a tough read.
Haven't tried.
And I am not an expert.
Are there pictures in it? No. Okay. Bad.
No, I haven't seen pictures. However, Muhammad starts out. So when Muhammad is a poor beggar shepherd, he's one of a bunch of preachers out there, and he's preaching to the choir, and he has this guy transcribing what he's saying. And in the beginning, it was a religion of peace. But then as he acquired military power and Islam began to dominate what's now the Saudi Peninsula, basically, and he became a warlord later in his life. And Islam morphed. And if you read the verses, you'll see Islam is when you listen to Muslims, it's clever how they say it. They're like politicians. We're a religion of peace, and we believe everyone will achieve peace under Islam.
Peace through strength. Okay.
Right. But it's under Islam. In other words, if you read the Quran, there are Muslims and there are infidels. And infidels are, you can lie to them, you can kill them. For example, I'll give you a good example that's completely, this is, again, you can fact check me on all of this.
Is this like saying when they say about Jews, oh, there's some obscure Talmudic reference, one line from 2,500 years ago, some rabbi, it's not canon, and now we're judging a whole religion based on that one? No, is this not
because the Talmud's not canon? You know that. So the Talmud is just a bunch of collections of stories from different great rabbis that doesn't agree with each other. And as you also know, that Orthodox scholars sit in rooms all their lives arguing over oh God, I do have, I'm like getting senile. The greatest rabbi of all time it was Maimonides, but the Baal Shem Tov. So I think the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of Hasidism. Anyway.
It doesn't matter.
One rabbi disagrees with another rabbi, that's what's in the Talmud. It's not a Bible. It's discussions of the Torah by great rabbis, and then people now argue over what the rabbis meant. The Talmud has no religious ruling. You know that. There's no such thing. I mean, there is a Talmud, obviously. It's huge, but it's not a book of law. The law is the Torah, the Pentateuch, the 5 original books of the Bible. That's the law. Okay. Everything else is just a discussion. In Islam, the Quran is the law. So, for example, a Muslim woman can marry a Christian or a Jewish man because she's just a woman. But, I'm sorry. A Muslim man, I got it backwards. A Muslim man can marry a Jewish or Christian woman because it's just a woman. What does it matter? But the Quran says you can marry her, but you have to hate her. It's literally in there. Okay. You can marry the infidel, and if you're a Muslim woman who marries an infidel man, your penalty is death. Because you can't allow defilement.
So let's take it as a given that there's a lot of fucked up shit in Islam.
Right.
There also may go ahead.
The moderate Muslims. I know where you're going to go. You're going to go to the moderate Muslims.
Or just, yeah.
Look, there are secular Muslims like there are secular Jews and there are secular Christians. People who are like me. I always say to people, I'm Jewish. I'm very proud of being
But
Jewish,
what
but I
about
don't.
Muslims who aren't secular but are, is there not? I don't want to totally shit on Islam from a place of
Here's
ignorance.
the
You're
thing.
not ignorant on it.
So here's my thought. I think that we have to, the immigrants who, up until this point, the immigrants who came to America from other places, whether it was from Eastern Europe like our ancestors did, or Ireland, or Italy, or Germany, or the Scandinavian countries, they all bought into the whole reason they came here is they bought into America. They bought into the opportunity, they bought into the system, they bought into the
100%.
culture. They came here to be Americans. My grandfather, who spoke English with a heavy Russian accent to the day he died, okay, never spoke Russian at home. I learned Russian in the military. I did not learn Russian at home. I could sing a little song in Russian and I knew a few sentences, but we were American. We were American Jews, not Jewish Americans. Very, very important distinction. Okay. So, same as the Irish people, same as the Italian people, same as the German, right? The Muslims that are coming here fall into two groups. There are the secular Muslims that come from modern places like, let's say, Turkey, which is a modern country, and they come here just because they want, or a lot of Persians, a lot of Iranians got the hell out of Iran when the Shah fell, and those were the secular Muslims in Iran, and they've come here and become very successful. I have tons
Me
of,
too.
when I say
I work
tons,
with a
not
guy.
millions, but I have a lot of Iranian friends, and they're uniformly successful, and they're uniformly Muslimish. They're secular Muslims. I was a friend of mine who was a Iranian hand surgeon in Tucson. I once asked him, I said, one day we were in the gym and we were on treadmills next to each other. And I said to him, I said, how is it that you and I get along so great? Like, I'm obviously Jewish and you're a Muslim. He says, because we're not stupid idiots. That was his answer. And there are plenty of Muslims who think that way. Okay. However, it's important to remember that Islam is a very young religion. It's only 1,300 years old. Christianity has had 2,000 years to work out the bullshit. So when I talk about the Inquisition and everything else, that's all been worked out. Okay, most Christians now would never even consider doing anything like that because time and science and evolution and knowledge has worn away the edges of stupidity, leaving a more secular church. For example, now the church only deals with issues of the soul when historically it was dealing with issues of state. The Vatican was a state unto itself. It had its own army, so on and so forth. The Holy Roman Empire, yada, yada, yada. All that's gone because Christianity is 2,000 years old and has had time to work out its youthful stupidity. Judaism is 5,785 years old. Okay, we're the oldest monotheistic religion. We worked out our bullshit a long time ago. That's why Jews, as you know, really don't try to convert anybody. As you know, to convert to Judaism is very difficult. You spend about a year and a half with every Jew you know telling you, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. What, you don't have enough problems in your life? You don't need to do this. The only reason to convert to Judaism is if you're a young woman who's a Christian and you're marrying a Jewish guy that this is his thing. He wants his kids to be Jewish, which means your mother has to be Jewish, which means that she has. But other than that, that's why we're a teeny tiny little religion, even though we're the oldest. We're the only one that says you don't have to be Jewish to go to heaven. That's what makes us special. You don't have to be Jewish to go to heaven.
But you can convert. And interesting, when I got married, I was talking to AI, Grok, use Grok exclusively, about, because the rabbi said, do a little Torah study, this and that, because the rabbi was Orthodox. My wife's mother found him and he's one of the best. He's like an ace. And so it was really a special thing. And he exceeded expectations. My Torah studies with him for 3 or 4 sessions over Zoom and one in person prior to were like amazing. It was all spiritual, soul, deep, like couldn't be cooler and more interesting. It was like not bullshit. So let my people choose, he said. That's his thing. Talking to AI,
how I always explain it to my Christian friends, when I explain how Jews see the world differently than Christians, I say, you people think God actually listens to your prayers. That's what the Holy Ghost is. That's the part of God that when you have a prayer, he's listening. Jews, we don't have a Holy Ghost and we don't have the Trinity. Jews, basically, our view of the world is God gave you a brain, gave you a set of laws, created the world and said, good luck. Do with it what you will. I'm here. I'll give you a little counsel every now and then, but what you do with your world is up to you. It's very different. So Jews, if you read a Jewish prayer, most of them are some version of, thank you, Lord, for giving me the wisdom to figure it out for myself. It's, Jews don't say, God, please, I need $100,000. I need to get it by Friday. If you only do, that's just.
You don't see a lot of Jews, and I'm not trying to be funny at all here, but praying before a football game, saying, help us get this victory.
Right. Yeah. Jews would say, why does God care who wins the football game? I mean,
Jews would be like,
I love a good
about
football
God about a
game.
football game. Come on.
Look, like I love football as much as the next guy, but God doesn't really give a shit. Let's be honest. When I hear players say, I give it all to God, good for you. But really, God doesn't care. I don't. But having said that, what do I know? Maybe God does care. What do I know?
Yeah.
But see, when I even say that, that's it's such a Jewish thing for me to say. What do I know? Jews, as you know, we don't see the world as black and white. We see this gray. But we're such a minor player here. Let's talk about the big picture. I realize the anti-Semites think we're in charge, but we're not. So let's just skip that. I mean, if we were in charge, the Holocaust would have never happened. Come on. I mean, we'd have murdered Hitler and his dad.
But look, I mean, no one's talking. They don't make the argument that we were in charge then.
Yeah, they think we're behind everything.
Now, yeah.
Listen, my family can't get along, let alone the entirety of the Jewish people in some kind of secret conspiracy. It's such a stupid thing. I don't even want to get into it. It's so dumb.
So real quick though, I was just saying, I was talking to AI about what it means, because I had I had like 9 friends come and none of them are Jewish. And so one of them we always have interesting deep chats about cool stuff and religion, whatever. And he actually on a related note, had fallen into some of this stuff online where he's really beginning to like question. He's not anti-Semitic, but he's like having the conversation with me and like, dude, like, is Israel fucked up? What is this all about? Jews, this doesn't seem right. And I would have to say, look, man. And so I was looking into, what does it mean to be chosen? Because you grow up going to Hebrew school and you're like, yeah, Jews are the chosen people. And I know it's not like in the material world, we're better than you type of thing, but I didn't know what it was all about. And then this concept of conversion, I'll be quick here. So I'm talking to AI and it basically says what it means when it's said that Jews are God's chosen people. What it means is that there's something about the Jewish soul that has a higher capacity to connect with God. Something like that.
That's
you can boil it down. No?
That's not what it means. No, Brock's wrong.
What does it mean?
No, chosen people means we were chosen by God to bring law to the people. See, people. So
maybe we're not saying the same thing. Maybe we're saying the same thing, though. Maybe we're
Look, if you're after the flood, the Noah flood. Let's pretend the Noah flood happened. And if you read the Bible, and I'm going to get into a little theology here. Everyone knows about the 10 Commandments, but everyone does not know about the Noahide laws. Do you know? Have you heard of the Noahide laws? Pardon me?
The 600 is that the 613 laws?
No, there's only 6. So basically, God restated the 10 Commandments down to 6, and they're called the Noahide laws. And in the Noah, and he got rid of a lot of the frills, all the idol shit and all that bullshit. He got down to what really counts. But the Noahide laws include the one and only affirmative commandment. So every other commandment in the 10 Commandments and the Noahide laws are thou shalt nots. Don't do this and don't do that. Don't dishonor your mother and father. Don't steal from your friends, that kind of thing. Do unto others as others would do unto you. Okay. But there's one in the Noahide laws, and it's thou shalt make laws. That's it. Laws are what separate the wild animals from civilization. And Jews were chosen by God through Noah, evidently. Again, I don't believe this is true. This, of course, is a biblical allegory, but this is where the term comes from. Jews were chosen by God to bring law to everybody, and then leave us alone. That's basically what it comes down to. And in return for bringing those laws, God had promised the Jewish people that he would destroy any nation that tried to destroy us. And if you look at it abstractly and you stand back historically through the 6,000 years of history, it would not be a stretch to see God's hand destroying each and every culture that tried to persecute us. So we've been persecuted by the Egyptians on down to the Nazis, and they're all gone. Now, you could take that as a coincidence, or you could take that as God did intervene in God's own way. And
what do you think?
That's why I say I'm agnostic and not atheist. I don't know. It's the honest answer. I really do see it. I see the people of the Holocaust as martyrs that created Israel in fulfilling biblical prophecy. Now, did that happen out of coincidence, or did God make it happen? Was Hitler actually a tool of God? Was Hitler actually put there to so move the planet into a moment of such guilt that Israel and the biblical dream was fulfilled, or was it a coincidence?
I was talking to a colleague, frankly, I was talking to a colleague briefly yesterday, and we were having this exact same conversation so randomly, briefly at work, downtime, real quick. And it was just somehow we got into, and I didn't initiate it, but it was about, is God moving the world, determinism, free will? Somehow we got there in a span of 5 minutes. And this is ultimately what we're talking about.
If there's, the argument an atheist will make, and I always say the reason I'm not an atheist is just because I don't want to be an asshole. And atheists tend to be assholes. They tend to make fun of people who have religious belief, and I just don't. I have too much respect for the collective wisdom of the good side of religion. I think without religion, mankind would have killed itself off years and years ago. For all of its bad, the enemy of good is perfect. Religion is not a perfect thing, but without it, we would not be able to continue. And that's a big worry of mine. That's an element of my campaign, believe it or not. But having said that,
in what way is it an element of your campaign?
Well, because I believe, so my campaign is, it's based on a lot of things, but at its heart, it's based on cause and correlation. Cause and correlation. People don't understand the difference. And because they don't understand the difference, they don't think critically. And because they don't think critically, we make stupid decisions. Okay. I say unapologetically a critical thinker. Whenever I like to say that, like I've said before, I like to play chess, not checkers. If I do this, what's going to happen as a result of this? If you try to cure a correlating problem to anything, you will only make the underlying problem worse. Okay, you will create unintended consequences worse than the so-called solution you thought you were imposing. A good example of this is the recent debate on Obamacare. Okay, so Obamacare comes in, the idea is to reduce premiums. Didn't reduce premiums. It made premiums go up faster than ever. Now the choice is presented to Republicans by Democrats. Subsidize this. We need to subsidize this year. People are hurting. They're going to lose their health insurance. To which the Republicans reply correctly, it's a Band-Aid on a tumor. Okay, this doesn't do anything but help this year. And when it comes back next year, it's going to be worse. That's what I'm talking about. That's a very simplistic understanding.
What's the answer on healthcare?
Oh, well, it's in a radical reset by the book. You want me to go through it simply? Let's go through it in bullet points. Number one, we have to introduce loser pays to the legal system. The civil justice system has to have loser pays. Now, every other civilized country in the world already has it, but loser pay says if you bring a lawsuit and you lose, you're responsible for the legal fees of the person you sued. Okay, it would do away with a lot of these contingency fee lawsuits where lawyers are out trolling for people who, the reason they call, for example, medicine the practice of medicine is because you're dealing with human bodies, and human bodies don't always react the same to everything. For example, I just started on Zepbound because I've been fighting the same 25 pounds my whole life, and screw it, I took the first shot on Wednesday.
Nice,
amazing stuff.
Why the hell not?
Now the doctor warned me about all the side effects that I was going to have. I had none of them. Okay, why did I have none of them? I'm just one of those people. That's how my body is. I've always been a fast healer. I got mildly nauseous for about half a day, and then it went away. And it's amazing. It just curbs my appetite. But that's not the reason I'm sharing the story. The point is, they're practicing medicine because the same operation done in two different patients, one will live and one will die. That shouldn't be something you can sue over. That wasn't negligence. That was just the way it happens. Okay? When you're... And so we have a lot of frivolous lawsuits that are brought, and that the malpractice carriers will settle out of because they don't want to go to court, and in the end, medicine has to absorb that cost. Okay,
this is what Karl Rove, wasn't it? Karl Rove who said we need tort reform, and I was like, what the hell does that mean? Is this what
tort reform is? Loser pays. I just put it in a way that's easier to understand.
Yes,
no one knows what a tort is. A tort is a cause for action, right? If you have a
civil wrong,
cause
that's
of action,
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they like to impress everybody that they know what a tort is.
Man, I didn't know for the longest time what that meant. I finally ended up in law school, and I had a buddy who was into
that's right. You're a lawyer. I'm telling you what a tort is. What an idiot!
It took me to the end of school before I was like, yeah, okay, tort reform. I could, okay, yeah.
We don't need tort reform. Okay, we need loser pays. That'll take care of that.
Yeah,
okay,
tort reform.
Okay. And that'll bring down enormously the cost of health insurance. We'll address lawyers more in a minute. Okay. Now, the second step, that's step one. Step two is we have to end Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare and Medicaid are the reason the health system is fucked up. So prior to Medicare and Medicaid, and don't freak out, older people. I have an alternative.
People are
I'm not
freaking
throwing
out,
you
so
out in
you
the
better
street.
come with it within a minute,
Yeah, I
right?
have the solution. Just stay with me. So
Yeah,
my
there you
veteran
go.
brothers and sisters, my old people brothers, I'm on Medicare. It's been great. But if you took Medicare and Social Security too, and that was the only thing that we paid for, and you shut down the whole rest of the government, the whole thing, we'd still be in deficit. Even the department, you shut down defense, doesn't matter. We're just spending way too much money on this stuff, and it has to be reformed. Sorry. Time to grow up, time to act like adults, time to be honest about it. There's going to have to be some reforms. Now, as it relates to healthcare, Medicare set up a model of health insurance that was then adopted by everybody as what health insurance had to be. So a deductible 80-20, 100%, and then you buy a supplement for what they don't pay for. And for example, I pay less than $200 a month for my Medicare, and that's absurd. Okay, because I'm paying less than you are for your health insurance. And that's absurd because I'm 68 years old and you're not. I have 2 titanium shoulders and I've had the bottom right lobe of my lung removed from a tumor. I'm an expensive baby. My bills were way over $100,000 for all that. But Medicare picked it all up, and what they did, my supplement picked up that I pay for out of my own pocket. Okay. But collectively, between my Medicare supplement and Medicare, I pay less than you do are you in your 30s?
Yeah, 36.
How old are you now?
36.
It's 36, you old fucker, you. But you look great.
I know.
Marvelous.
I know, and I know.
Marvelous. Okay, so you really do look marvelous. So anyway.
I'm a youthful baby face.
You are youthful.
I've gotten better looking as well.
The problem is that Medicare then began to try to monopolies. When you create basically a monopoly, the only way you can control costs is through rationing. So Medicare set up tons of rules and regulations as to how much you can charge and what's the approved charge and what's the perceived charge. And medical practices have to hire specialists. Big practices have whole departments of people that do nothing but decipher Medicare rules and regulations or Medicaid. Same thing. Medicaid rules and regulations. The only difference between Medicare and Medicaid is Medicaid pays 100% of the bill for poor people. Medicare pays 80% of the bill for everybody else. But otherwise, it's the same thing. And Medicaid will cover 100% of the bill for poor people who are under 65, where Medicare, you have to be 65. But essentially, that's the only difference. And there's an enormous amount of fraud in both. I mean, just enormous. Minnesota is the tip of the iceberg. And it imposes enormous administrative costs on the medical community that just shouldn't be there. Okay. Doctors should be allowed to practice medicine. Okay. It also restricted how much money insurance companies can make from doing health insurance, which is why today there are only 2 or 3 insurance companies that even issue health insurance policies anymore. And everybody else is withdrawn from the market because, again, politicians are lying. They'll say, oh, Aetna does, $50 billion a year in premiums or whatever the number is. I don't know. I just pulled that out of my tuchus. But that sounds like a lot of money until you realize their profit margin is less than 1%. Most of that money goes into a pool waiting to pay out the other end on people's claims. Where do you think the money? And then people will say, but I went a whole year and I didn't collect anything. I should get my premium back. No. That's not how insurance is. A collective pool where everyone pays in, and people called actuaries calculate how much it's going to take to pay everybody's claims.
I don't know anything about insurance, but I don't think you get your premium back if you didn't use it. I don't think that's how it works.
You're not a socialist. You're just not a socialist. Jesus. You're not Elizabeth Warren, that frickin' moron. So anyway, so the bottom line, or Bernie Sanders, a man who's had the distinction of being wrong about everything for his entire career. So we have to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid. That takes all of that compliance off of the doctor's backs. Okay, and I have an alternative. Just stay with me.
Yep.
Now, if we do loser pays and we get rid of Medicare and Medicaid, that leaves enormous problems. Okay, but before I get onto that, I'll get back to those problems. There's a third thing we need to do, which is change how we protect the intellectual property of drug companies. So, drug prices, which are an enormous problem. There are a lot of contributing factors, not the least of which are Medicare and Medicaid. And drug prices would go down just by getting rid of Medicare and Medicaid, but also because a patent is only for 20 years. And that sounds like a long time. But you have to understand that to get through the FDA, to get to an approved medicine, a drug company will typically develop 5,000 drugs for one successful drug that gets all the way through. So in their labs, there are people tinkering all day long, coming up with ideas. And 4,999 out of 5,000 in round numbers
Thomas Edison
fail. Fail. Go right down the drain. But why they can afford to do that, why they can afford to hire those researchers, how they can afford to come up with these wonder drugs that are helping all of us live longer, okay, is because they make enough money on the drugs that work. So yes, there's a huge margin in drugs because
That's a
there's so
great
few
point.
that work.
Wow.
Okay, now, how can we alleviate this? Number one is there was a lot of inequity between how the Europeans were getting priced on drugs with the drug companies, but that's being addressed by Trump, I think, successfully, and we'll just leave that alone. But the other issue really is I would switch drugs to a royalty system instead of a patent system. So instead of, I would treat drugs the way we treat music. So, for example, some years ago, I knew a guy in Studio City who was the drummer for the Animals. I don't know if you remember the Animals. They
Sure.
were a
Yeah.
60s rock group.
Don't let me be misunderstood. The famous one,
Right.
of
Eric
course,
Bird
is
was the lead singer. Yeah. Eric
what
Bird just died recently, by the way.
what was it?
So
Now that
anyway,
song, no, their most famous hit though was a
House of
folk
the Rising
song.
Sun.
It was like a folk
House of the
song, right?
Rising Sun.
Yeah, they
There
didn't
is a
write it
house in
though,
New Orleans. Yeah.
but they didn't write it, but
That
they made it
song.
famous. Yeah.
Okay. That song. Okay. They did write it.
Oh,
And when
did
it
they?
came to, and when it came down to put their signatures on the writing, the other guys in the Animals, this is a true story, were all so high and we're all such heroin addicts. And the only guy that wasn't was the drummer. And he was the only one smart enough to put his name on as an author of The House of the Rising Sun.
Oh,
Today, I tell you for a fact, he lives in Studio City in a lovely home, supporting his lovely family and having a wonderful life just on the royalties from the House of New Orleans. Because every time it's played anywhere in the world, a fraction of a penny goes into the royalty account, which then pays him at the end of the year for his share of the royalties as the author of The House of the Rising Sun. So, bottom line is that's how I would treat drugs. So, if you came out with a drug like, let's say, Zepbound, okay, the one I'm using, Zepbound is cost in round numbers $200 a month if you're buying it without insurance. Okay. Now, if it was a royalty system, you could probably get it for $40 a month because they wouldn't be losing their patent to generic producers down the road where they're going to have to try to recover all their costs in the first 2 decades. They can spread it out and thereby lower the cost of drugs. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, kind of, but walk me through it one more time. And so the patent model is there's a 20-year. What is the 20-year rule?
20 years. And when the patent runs out, that's it. Anyone can make your drug.
Right.
I'm saying anyone can make your
So
drug.
instead of trying to squeeze your profits into that 20 years, you do a royalty system.
License it out to generic producers, collect the lick of the ice cream cone from all of them, make the money you would have made, but from many other sources, free up your own staff to do nothing but research. It's a win-win, and the cost of drugs goes way down.
Okay. Love it.
Now let's go back to Medicare, Medicaid. I repealed it. What would I do? Yes. Okay. For veterans, okay, which is a special class, instead of the whole VA system, which I use and is better than people think it is, but it's an enormous bureaucracy. Okay. I'd shut that down and I'd give every veteran platinum card or a black card, call it what you want, a healthcare card that you can go to any doctor you want, any hospital you want. It's all paid for 100%. That's it. You check in, I'm a veteran, a qualifying veteran. I mean, you got to be a certain kind of veteran. And I'm a qualified veteran. Here's my health card. Everything's taken care of. Gold standard. Best doctors in the world. Go to the Mayo Clinic. Enjoy yourself. It'll be far cheaper than maintaining that gigantic bureaucracy. And the veterans will get much better care. It's a win-win. The reason that we haven't done it is it calls for no bureaucrats. We could have Visa and MasterCard issue the goddamn card. And the card is just an automatic pay. The veteran, now I do exactly the same thing for old people, people with pre-existing conditions, or people that are on Medicaid legitimately, in other words, people that are working, but something bad has happened, but they're going to eventually get off of it. For those groups, I'd give them also a card. The only difference would be the benefit of the card would be you can use the card to buy private insurance from anybody you want. Okay. Up to a certain dollar amount based on income and assets. Okay. So in other words, the reason that older people need Medicare is because if I had to pay the cost of my health insurance out of pocket, I'll bet you that for me, it would be maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a month, given my health history. Okay. It would be completely unaffordable. So Medicare for me is a gift. I love Medicare, but it's costing America too much. So what if we just gave me and people like me a card to buy our own private insurance from anyone we want based on our income and our assets. And the reason I say assets is a lot of people hide their income and their assets. You can cheat that system by pretending you have no income, but you have millions of dollars worth of real estate, and you can pretend like you can't access it, but you can. So I'm saying based on income, which just, you just ask people the question. Most people are honest. Again, there are people that try to cheat it, and we'll catch them and prosecute them and do all those things. I'm talking about for the greater good, simplify the system. The one thing the government does well is write checks. Give people a card that they can go out and buy first-class health insurance from a private insurer. And this brings us to another point. Why have to buy things you're never going to use? For example, by law, maternity has to be covered as any other illness in health insurance. That's part of what came out of Medicare and Medicaid becoming part of the law that supports health insurance. Well, let's say that I'm gay, okay, and my partner is gay, and we're never going to have children. Why is part of our health insurance premium paying for maternity benefits exactly? That's incredibly wasteful. We're never going to use them. We're paying for something we're not. You're taxing us in a hidden way. That's what would be going on. By the way, I'm not gay. Thank you very much. But for children, grandchildren,
I know I didn't make I didn't make the easy. I didn't go. Maybe. What if? I didn't do that.
I don't know that it's really matter, but I'm just saying those people aren't going to have babies. Okay. Conversely, I as an old guy shouldn't have to have maternity coverage built into my premium either, because I got news for you. I'm not chasing young girls. I'm not a creep. Now. If you want to buy it a la carte, that's what let the free market do. Instead of having 3 companies doing health insurance, let's have 30,000 companies doing health insurance. Let's make it a competitive market. To understand the difference between capitalism and socialism, which is what Medicare is, really. It's state-controlled medical care. And by the way, all of you have never lived in a capitalist country. Those people who think that capitalism has problems, you don't know, because you've never lived in a capitalist country. Neither have I. None of us have ever lived in a capitalist country. Okay, this is a form of socialism. We live in a crapitalist country. We have crappy capitalism. We have cronies and we have insider dealing and all kinds of corruption. And yet capitalism still works pretty well, which tells you why capitalism is great. Because even when you load it up full of crap, it still somehow manages to
you burden it, and it's still trekking.
It still goes on. While socialism, the argument that every socialist always gives you, when you say to them the obvious truth, which is it's failed 100% of the time, the answer is always they've never done it right. Okay, basically, I'm paraphrasing it.
Yes.
For a system to be so delicate, even if that were true, that you have to find the fine tuning to make it work right, good luck with that.
Right. That's a great point.
The real reason it doesn't work is it's contrary to human nature.
And I love this idea of, dude, it's the perfect political identity. Get rid of the socialism that doesn't work, the bureaucracies that are ineffective. Great. That makes sense to me. Follow the intellect, where people who I respect make these points about economics. I don't really know it, but I think they're right. Do that. But wait, you're going to abandon people. No, just give them money directly.
Just give them the money. Give them a card.
It's amazing. It's perfect.
And it doesn't call for a massive bureaucracy, and it doesn't call for codes, and it doesn't call for staffs to do the Medicare billing.
It's not pure libertarianism.
No, but I'm not. Look, pure libertarianism is like Plato's Republic.
Yes, perfectly said. Perfectly said.
It's very utopian, but it's not going to happen. Okay, so instead, for example, I'm not opposed to a welfare state. I'm opposed to a federal welfare state. Okay, so in other words, I think that the job of the federal government should be what the Constitution said the job of the government should be, which is to protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic. Period. That's it. That's the only thing it should be doing. The Army, the Navy, and all that's fine. And the Department of Justice to chase down criminals interstate so they can't run from Florida to New York and get away with it. You got to have a federal justice system. A Department of the Treasury to manage the budget. A Department of State.
How about Besant? Speaking of him, give me a few thoughts as we do our last 15 minutes here. Speaking of the Treasury, tell me about Scott Bessent and your opinion on him and the smackdown of Newsom. Have you seen the clips from yesterday? I could say when he said he's doing a media interview, I guess he's back home now. Did you see that?
I saw it too.
So give me your thoughts on all this. On Davos, on Bessent, on Newsom.
I have a problem with tariffs in general. Can I be honest with you? This is a big part of what I disagree with Trump on.
Right.
I don't see a historic case where tariffs have ever turned out well for the country issuing the tariffs. They seem to be working to an extent. I think the jury's out. I don't have an opinion on that. I I think it's going to contribute to the coming SHTF moment. I think these tariffs. The problem is, again, we're addressing a trade deficit is a meaningless number. It doesn't mean anything. You have a trade deficit with the grocery store. You go to the grocery store, you buy groceries, you get the
Yeah.
groceries, they get your money. Oh, look, you're in deficit to the grocery store, but you got the groceries. That's what people never talk about. Yeah, Chinese took a lot of dollars, but we took a
Mhm.
lot of Chinese stuff. And frankly,
Mhm.
since the dollar is nothing but paper and ink and a wish, the stuff is worth more than the dollars are, really, if you think about it
Mhm.
logically.
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't believe there is a trade deficit. I think that's a nonsense. It's a meaningless statistic.
Mhm.
It's a throwback to Keynesianism that we ought to just throw away. It means nothing.
I hosted a guy a couple weeks ago named David Jones, a businessman, construction builder, built a like 10,000s unit. He's like a big time builder somewhere in Florida. He lives in Maine now. He's running for governor of Maine. Nice guy, really nice guy. And he said that Trump is going to replace the income tax with tariffs. Is that? And then I spoke to a guy after that who said that's not possible.
It's how the government ran until 1913. Okay, so here's the argument for it, the argument against it, and what I think we really should do. The argument for it is the government supported itself through tariffs from the founding till 1913, when Woodrow Wilson introduced the 16th Amendment and introduced the income tax, which should have never been introduced. No, it wasn't the 16th. I'm sorry.
I think it was, or was it? Yeah,
Maybe it was. It was either.
I think it was.
Well, whatever. Anyway, they amended the Constitution. The 17th was the election of senators. The 16th was the income tax. But when he introduced
Yeah, yeah.
the income tax, we never had one before. We supported the government before. The government was much, much smaller. Abraham Lincoln conducted the entire Civil War with a White House staff of 50.
Mm.
50. Not
I just watched Lincoln, by the
50,000.
way. That was so good.
Yeah, it's 50, not 50,000,
Right.
not 5,000, 50.
Wow.
Because the government was doing what the government's supposed to do. Again, I don't want to discuss the Civil War. Having said that, okay, I'm just pointing out the government was a lot smaller. What's happened is we so polluted the income tax is a sneaky way to support this welfare. People think they're paying in when they're not. It's all a sham. Okay, and the idea of redistributing wealth through a graduated income tax doesn't work. I think we've done this long enough to realize that. The analogy I use is it's like you take a bucket and you scoop a bucket of water out of the deep end of the pool. You run to the shallow end. You throw it into the shallow end, and it goes right back to the deep end. Meanwhile, as you're running to the shallow end, you spill half of it. That's waste and fraud. And only half of it gets thrown back in the pool, but it then goes right back to the deep end. And as long as there's inflation, which will always be present in a fiat economy because they cause it on purpose, it's going to constantly do that. So the income tax is terrible at raising money. On the other hand, I've done the math, and I don't think you can support the government at anywhere near the current level on tariffs at a reasonable level. Okay, so what I think is a combination of low tariffs, because if there's a 5% or a 10% bar to doing business in the United States, our GDP is big enough that we could raise a lot of money through a 10% tariff. We would almost be there. The rest I would do through a national sales tax. I think that's the absolute way to go. I think people have to see what things cost, while at the same time, everybody has to pay in. I think one of the biggest problems we have is that we allow people to vote who aren't actually paying for anything. Over half the population doesn't pay any income tax at all.
I know, and that's a controversial view. It's a relatively controversial view that you have, but it's one that you've expressed since I first met you, and that is that you don't think people the right to vote, you really shouldn't have it unless you're paying taxes.
I think you shouldn't have a right to vote
Used to
unless
have
you're
a
working
property,
full-time.
used to be a property right,
Right, but that was an agrarian economy, and that would have to change because, again, people don't own a patch of ground to feed their family anymore, and so real estate. That's another discussion, by the way, which I'm happy to have. But real estate needs to collapse. But if it does, it'll cause so much suffering. That's what I'm afraid of. This real estate's going to collapse. The stock market's going to collapse, and it's going to cause immeasurable suffering. Just unbelievable, because of the way we've artificially used the tax code to drive up the value. Do you mind if I go into real estate just a bit because it's relevant to the? Okay.
Yeah.
Real estate, your home should not be an appreciating asset. Let me just state that simply. Your home should not be an appreciating asset if you think about it rationally. Because just like a car, when you buy a new home, from day one, it begins deteriorating.
Mhm.
And to the extent that you can keep up with the deterioration, the pipes sooner or later are going to have to be changed. The roof's going to have to be changed. The windows are going to have to be changed. It's got to be painted over and over. The drywall's eventually it's all going to have to be serviced. And over time, it's just going to be an old house. It
Mhm.
should depreciate like a car. Okay. Why doesn't it depreciate like a car? Why is it that the price of real estate goes up? And the answer is government interference through the income tax. So
Mm.
combined with the GI Bill. So after World War II,
Mm.
the government decided that the veterans should all be able to buy a house when they get home. Why did they decide that? Don't know. But they decided that all the veterans should be able to have a house when they get home. So they created a GI Bill and VA loans, which, by the way, I have benefited from myself. I'm a hypocrite, but I'm also not stupid. If you're going to offer me, if you're going to offer me
Sure.
an ice cream cone, I'm going to say thanks. Yeah, I'll take it.
Right.
Even if it's a stupid idea, because why let it melt? I might as well enjoy it, right?
Absolutely.
So they had to be so all these GIs came home, millions and millions and millions of men and women, and they were able to buy houses with no money down, in the $5,000 to $9,000 range in those days, with zero down in these developments all over the country. And then the Congress passed a law to make the mortgage interest deductible and to exclude a certain percentage, and that's changed over the years, of the capital gains when you sell the house. It excluded from capital gains treatment. This set up the expectation of appreciation. You can just see, and then so houses. The only thing that should be appreciating about your house is the dirt it's sitting on.
Right.
Okay, so if you have an incredibly valuable lot, that's one thing. But if it's just a lot in a subdivision, your house should be depreciating, not appreciating. That's the problem. That's why we have a supply problem today, because we've so appreciated the value of homes through inflation and tax code that we've left out the entire. There's no entry level left. There's no place to get into the market. Okay, because everything is appreciated past the point of being economically justifiable. It's not justifiable at a tract home in Phoenix, Arizona. A tract home. Lovely. Let's say 1,500, 1,700 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nice little lot, nice little subdivision, good middle class neighborhood, decent schools, yada, yada. That should not cost $500,000. That's insane. Okay, but it does. Okay, that means no entry level. Now, what's being set up now, and I could go deeper into this, but here's why the crash is coming. The rental market is collapsing. Okay. I don't know if you've noticed that where you are, but it is everywhere. Okay. And when I say collapsing, rents are going down significantly. In the last year, they've gone down a lot. You're starting to see it here in Phoenix with the free rent offers. That's how it starts. 1 month free rent, 2 months free rent, no security deposit. They're starting to make those offers. They're all over the place. Why? Because they overbuilt. They built way too many rental houses. Now, let's say that your choice is you're renting. You're a young couple. You've just got married, like you did. You're renting let's say for the time being, and let's say you don't live in Southern California, in San Diego, where rent's insane. Let's say you live here in Phoenix, okay, which is more like America. It's still too expensive, but more like America. Okay, so you're living in, let's say, a 2-bedroom apartment because you want to have a guest room in case family comes to visit, whatever. I don't know, a sewing room, an office, a study, whatever. You have a 2-bedroom apartment. It's lovely. It's in a nice thing, and you're paying here in Phoenix. You're paying $2,200 a month for that. And it's an upscale apartment. You could rent one for a lot less, but I'm talking, this is a nice apartment. Washer, dryer in the unit, covered parking in the parking lot, security gates so everyone just can't come in. This is not a shithole. This is a nice apartment. $2,200 a month. But if you go out to buy a house at the average value, you're looking at a mortgage payment of closer, at the current interest rates, of closer to $4,000 a month. Okay, now the question becomes, why would you do that? Okay, why would I take on that much debt, plus the maintenance of all of that, when I could stay where I am at $2,200 and have no maintenance risk at all? It's all taken care of by the landlord. Okay, and increasingly, that's what's happening. And since there's no houses for you to get into in the $150,000 range, where the rent would be the same as the mortgage would be the same as your rent, rational people are going to choose rent more times than they're going to try to get up the down payment and the money to buy it. Okay. Consequently, real estate is starting to bust in places all over the country, and it's going to be a bust bigger than 2008 when it's all said and done. Because all of this price run up is the artificial run up caused by the $15 trillion in printed currency that we pumped into the economy during COVID for absolutely no reason. and inflated the living shit out of these assets. People think that inflation came just at the end of Biden's term. Inflation came immediately in the form of asset prices. This is also why the rich seem to be getting richer while everybody else is not, because rich people own assets. They own stocks and they own homes. So they're getting richer and richer and richer through inflation, not because they did anything smart, but inflation drives up the value of those assets while people who don't own the assets are getting butt fucked, okay, through grocery prices and, well, until recently, gasoline prices. Trump has done a very good job on gasoline. And, like, except in California, you poor schmucks. I love you. I love you, man.
I know.
You live in the greatest state governed by the biggest bunch of morons. But as far as Gavin Newsom goes, Gavin Newsom is, what was George Bush's brother's name that never became president? What was his name? The governor of Florida.
Jeb.
Yeah, he's this year's version of Jeb Bush. He's everybody's sure thing. That's never good. He's never going to be president of anything. He looks like a sure thing. He looks like he's going to be president. He sounds like he's going to be president. He's got the banter down. He's really good. He's one of the best I've ever seen at changing the subject when he's trapped.
He's good at all. You want to hear my? All right, you want to hear my 3 minutes on Gavin Newsom?
Yeah,
3 minutes. Did I ever tell you that I met him? I had an encounter with him. Okay, so I think it was actually, I was thinking about it earlier. I think it was like March 2023. And the company I work for on occasion sends certain people, I was one of them, to go to certain events. And there was a political fundraiser, and I actually had been to it a few times. This was probably my third year in a row going. It's the Victory Fund, if you've ever heard of it. But they fund, it's a really progressive thing. What they do is they fund LGBTQ political candidates. It's something that the company I work for supports, and I go and I have a lovely time every time. It's fine. They're progressive, but they don't really get whatever. They don't get into policy. So I have nothing to argue with. Do I support a group of people coming together and supporting themselves? Absolutely. So it's cool. It's fine. And it's a fun cocktail party. So Newsom was there, and this was, just as the election was getting underway, and it wasn't really clear that he wasn't going to be running yet. It was what's going to happen? And so, anyway, to be quick about this, Newsom is going to be at this event. That's crazy. And so there he was doing his thing with his makeup, and he had his assistant, and he was being chatty and doing his thing. And we had the two people I was with had a brief encounter with him. I forget what it was all about, but we just said, all right, let's get the hell out of here. We did it. Let's go. Let's not be annoying. And so we went across the entire, where were we? We were in some sort of courtyard, big outdoor thing. We went across all the way, and we got to the coffee station. We made ourselves a coffee. Next thing you know, he's following us, and we go, is he following us? Of course he wasn't, but he just went to get a coffee as well. And so next thing you know, it's like he followed us. So I turned to him and I said, I made some joke about coffee. I go, when you're the governor of California, don't you have people to make your coffee? He laughed and whatever. But then he laughed, and then literally he hopped on the adjacent little park bench, and that's where he gave his little stump speech. And he was nailing DeSantis, because everyone thought DeSantis was probably going to be the guy. And he was nailing him about the trans issue and book banning and all this stuff. And people were eating it up and going, Gavin, Gavin, Gavin. And I go, wow, this guy is really good. And he's good. He's done all the appearances on TV since. And he's good. He's a really good traditional politician. But have we outgrown that? Post-Trump, will that work? Now, on his strategy to be Trump-like, I said, look, I don't like it. It's not working for me, but it is working for him. And Scott Galloway, is that his name, that well-known commentator? I saw a clip of his just yesterday where he said, and I roasted him on it a little bit because I was like, all right, Scott Lewinsky. But it was a decent analysis. And he goes, this guy, Gavin, is walking around like he's the next president. And he's acting like it. And people are buying it. And I buy that. And so he's good. He's good. But do I think he's going to be the next Jeb? I do. I don't think but it's interesting. He's in contention for sure. But he's got a record that's hard. Now, Grok gives him a B as governor. But he's got a lot to overcome, including the French laundry.
Who gives him a B?
Grok.
That's good. Who's
AI?
Grok?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't think so.
Yeah.
The fact is that California is a well-known basket case in the other 49 states. And You can fool some of the people some of the time and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And the fact of the
Mm.
matter is that no matter how he portrays it, millions and millions of Californians have left the state and they've gone to Texas and Florida primarily, some
Yes.
to my state, but Texas and Florida primarily. And that's an irrefutable fact. And the people that left and went to those two states were the people who were the best and most important part of his tax base. And that's
Mm.
and that's continuing to this moment because they have one party government in that state, which is insane. Okay. I mean, I'm not saying that they should at least have a split legislature to slow down the disaster that they've done to themselves. But California is the worst. And the fraud
Mm.
in California, I was speaking earlier, I think fraud's going to be the issue. I think
Mhm.
he won't be able to
Yeah.
escape what's coming out on the fraud. I think that the
Mhm.
bullet train fraud is going to
Yeah.
be unbelievable. There's
Mm.
there's tens of billions of dollars and no track. 1 mile of track. Where's the goddamn money? And they're going to have to answer for it. And you're not going to be able to hide anymore behind it was legal fraud. You can make That's what these NGOs are. You can make fraud
Mhm.
look legal by setting up these
Right.
things and,
No, we
and
don't
these
care
phony
anymore.
deals.
We want competence.
Right. It's fraud still. It's still fraud. You can call it whatever you want, but
Right.
it's still fraud. If the same thing's going to be true when they start to investigate where did the money go, the 24 billion for the homeless in Los Angeles
Mm.
and San Francisco, and they didn't build anything. And there's still as many
Mm.
homeless as ever, and the money's all gone. And where did it go? And I think that's the tip of the iceberg. And you're going to see all of these independent journalists, call them what you want. You want to argue that they are or they're not journalists? I think they are, because
Mm.
unlike the so-called mainstream journalists, they don't sit in their office reading AP wire notices and call
Mm.
that a story. These
Mm.
these guys, like that kid in Minnesota whose name
Nick
is Dean
Shirley. Yeah.
something or other. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's out there beating on the street. That's
Right.
what makes the report credible. He's doing what
Mm.
reporters used to do.
Mm.
Okay, and for every one of him, there's 10,000 more out there right now digging around everywhere
Mm.
looking for
Right.
this fraud, and it's going to come out like crazy. That's the beauty of the internet. And
Yes.
Gavin Newsom will never be the president of the United States. He won't be the president of the dog club
Mm.
when he announces. He's the early favorite because it's an easy. They're also lazy. Most of the mainstream media is
Mm.
lazy, and they don't dig in to see where the underlying talent is. I
Mhm.
think that depending on what happens in Minnesota, I think Amy Klobuchar is setting herself up for a run for sure. I think she's running
Mm.
for governor because most good presidents were governors before they were presidents, and I think she feels she has to notch that on her resume. And I
You
think that
think
she
she
has
would
very
run for governor, and then immediately run for president?
sure. Barack Obama ran for
Okay.
president. He was a senator for 2 years.
Okay.
Why
Fair
not?
enough. I know you like Jared
Okay.
Polis.
I like Jared Polis. He's never going to be president.
Mm.
Um, I like Shapiro, but I don't think he can get nominated in the Democratic Party, which kind of points to what I'm
Mm.
talking about. I don't think
Yeah.
I think the Democratic Party has an anti-Semitism problem that's very
Yeah.
large within its progressive wing, and I don't think
100%.
it'll nominate a Jew. And
That's what's
Shapiro is
crazy. Yeah.
probably
That's crazy. Yeah. What an
Shapiro's a Jew.
irony.
Polis is yeah.
Yeah.
Shapiro's a Jew. Polis is a Jew. It's like they're best people, uh, and
Yeah.
and they're you might as well rule them out. They'll never get nominated in the in the party of
Mm.
Ilhan Omar and AOC. It just won't happen, and that's why I think the Libertarian Party, if it pulled its head out of its national ass, has a case to be made,
Mm.
because we are the party where the Democrats ought to be going, who can't stand it any longer. Okay.
Mm.
Because what are libertarians but socially liberal and fiscally conservative, which is what a lot of Democrats would describe themselves as.
Right.
And I was going to say on the welfare state earlier, I was going to talk about this. I'm not opposed to welfare state. I simply think it should be done at the state level. And it should be done at the state level for a couple of reasons. Number one is we have 50 states that are as different as night is today. Wyoming cannot be governed like California, just can't. Completely different populations, completely different sizes of populations, completely different demographics. The same holds true between Alabama and the state of Washington, or Maine and Texas. You can't, these one size fit all programs are stupid on their face because of the demographics of the country. And secondly, they can't be efficiently managed from the center. They're just too big. The
Mm.
bigger anything is, the more likely, the easier it is to defraud big things. Big companies are easier to screw than little companies, because at the
Mm.
little company, the owner is looking at the books every day, where at the big company, it's some staffer at the 14th level, and no one really pays attention as long as the ball keeps rolling. That's true in government as well. So I would
Mm.
simply, and if and the other reason I'd send it to the states is that we would have 50 laboratories of how to do different things. So one state will try one thing and let them all experiment with what works well, because welfare is back to, I know I'm jumping around, but I talked about cause and correlation earlier. AFDC is one of the primary causes of the breakdown of the nuclear family in the United States, and the nuclear family is the problem. If you have to distill the whole thing down,
For anyone who
to
missed it, what is
discussion we're having,
AFDC?
aid to family with dependent children. It's what we call welfare. Okay, welfare and AFDC are synonymous. AFDC is the official term for it. So in order to collect AFDC, you have to have a baby out of wedlock. And the more
Yep.
babies you have, the more money you get. And an idiot could see that's an incentive to have children out of wedlock. Okay, it's the reason why in the Black community, 80% of children are born into single parent families. It's not a coincidence that Black people get killed in confrontations with police. There's no father at home to slap that kid around and say, when the police stop,
It's crazy. It's crazy on that alone. Talking about how, people like myself have kind of awakened away from the left, at least the contemporary left. On that issue alone, you go, wow, talking about cause and correlation. Geez, if that doesn't make you sit up straight and go, wow, we need to fix that. That makes sense. And that's fucked up. The Black community was thriving. The government comes in and it screws up the incentives. And now people are getting killed in the streets because they don't have fathers.
Black people are going to have, someone's going to have a stern talking to and an honest discussion with the Black people of this country. And I don't know if they're going to be receptive for this discussion. And this discussion goes like this: welfare has failed you. Okay. Subsidizing laziness just gets more laziness. And we can call it what it is. There are millions and millions of people on welfare, Black, white, brown, every color, but heavily Black. Okay. Lesser extent Latino, some whites, almost no Asians. Okay. Not too many Asian and Jewish welfare recipients, but in the Black community, it's an enormous percentage. And that percentage of people who aren't we're subsidizing sloth. And idle hands are the devil's workshop. And if you don't have a father to teach you where your boundaries are, you're going to become a wild, not always, but often a wild Indian. Okay. And if you're taught from birth, and if your public message from the Democratic Party and people like it is constantly that you're a victim and you're not responsible for how you feel because you're a victim of this white state. And again, I'll stand before, and I plan to do it, I'll stand before a Black congregation in a Black church, and I'll say it right to their face. No one is going to pay reparations to people who have never had it done to them from people who never did it. You might as well let go of this stupid discussion. It's not going to happen. Okay. Number two, slavery in the United States was better than other country slavery, not worse. This nonsense that we were somehow the sole, our country, out of the 11 million people that came to the Western Hemisphere from Africa, 450,000 came to the United States. The rest went to the islands and Brazil. Okay. And they have it much worse than American Blacks. Much worse. The Spaniards and the French treated the slaves in their countries much worse than the English and
this point is only I believe the point is only here that, hey,
to get rid of this,
enough with this hating America just for hating America narrative.
It's over. Slavery ended 200 years ago. Enough is enough already. It's like, it would be like if every Jew, it was the Holocaust. It was the Holocaust. I can't do well. It's the Holocaust. I can't, my family we lost family. It still scars me. It's the Holocaust. That's how stupid that argument is. And it's, you get off of it. Okay. Did bad things happen? Yeah. Okay. I can see. Do we need to spend time arguing about it? No. Was it uniquely a white thing? Every single slave in the Western Hemisphere was sold in slavery by other Black people. Every single one. And you know how I know that? Malaria. Okay, they didn't cure malaria until 1930. Okay, prior to that, the average lifespan of a white man in Africa was 9 months. That's why there were no white slavers, because you would drop dead. The reason slavery stopped from Africa to the New World in 1838 was because as many sailors were dying above decks as below from malaria. Okay, malaria stopped the slave trade. Okay, and it's as simple as that. Getting into this, white people, no, they weren't. But Africa still has slaves. I mean, would any American Black want to go? So shut up already.
Look,
and figure it out.
I hear what you're saying, and I go with that. I certainly wouldn't. And I like the idea of getting in front of a person and saying to their face, "This is how I see it, and this is the truth." I'm sure you wouldn't. I'm not speaking for you, but for myself, I obviously recognize the unique horrific experience that Black people had in America, and I don't pretend it didn't exist.
It was not uniquely horrific. See, I reject that. It was not uniquely horrific. And look, at the end of the Second World War, 90% of Black people lived in poverty in this country. Between 1945 and 1960, that number had halved. Okay, by 1960, it was about 40% of Black people lived in poverty, and 60% did not. And that was during Jim Crow, and with no social programs, zero. And 80% of Black kids, and 80% of Black kids were born into two-parent families in 1960. And now that number is reversed, and Black people's poverty has become a lifestyle. And not just Black people, for poor white people and poor Latinos, there's a subclass of people in this country. Forget the color. Let's put that aside for now. There's a subclass of welfare recipients living on the dole. It's the only healthy demographic in the country. They're breeding like bunny rabbits without fathers. I call it bastards squared. Okay, bastards getting with bastards to have more bastards to have more bastards. At this point, we're about at bastards to the 20th power. We have surrounded ourselves with bastards.
A nation of bastards. That's a good book title.
Yeah, believe me. It's going to be a part of a speech I'm giving. And bastards are the problem. If you want to know the cause of most of what's wrong in this country, it's bastards. It's people who were raised without a father to tell them, rein it in. That's the role of your father. Your role of a father, as a father myself, is to help your children find their limits and to reinforce that they're special in the world. Now, without that, they become little psychopaths, often, not always. There can be other men in the family, like in wealthy families, where the girl gets knocked up, the grandfather or the uncle can step in and perform the role of the father. That's fine. But in a lot of these, there's no uncles. Mom's a bastard. Dad was a bastard. Grandpa was a bastard. Grandma's a bastard. Their great-grandma's a bastard. Great-grandpa's a bastard. They're all bastards. None of them know what they're doing.
All right, let me rein it in now. Speaking of making you feel special and reining you in and putting my limits on.
I just like to say bastard a lot. I love that, but we need to re-stigmatize bastardy. I'm not kidding. We need to re-stigmatize bastardy.
Yeah. So to put a bow on it, I'm with you. You make a lot of sense to me. You always have. That's why we hit it off, and I love talking to you. I would just say about Black experience in America, because I'm so anti-CRT, I'm so anti-racism, I'm so pro-cultural side of MAGA. So I think it's okay. It's worth me saying that I don't pretend that Black people didn't have trauma in America. So forget the unique label. Black people had trauma systemically in America. I don't even want to hear a rebuttal. I'm with you that maybe
everybody had trauma who came to America.
I understand. In certain environments, perhaps without maximum freedom, even Black people were thriving at certain periods. Great, fine, indicative of their grit. I am never going to be. I have no problem pausing and saying, "Wow." Reflecting in Black History Month. I mean, I think it's all fine. It's just a matter of not crossing that line, not feeding the victim mentality.
Black History Month.
Well, and I'm okay. I'm open to that conversation as well. Totally.
Or a Jewish history or an Italian history or an Irish history.
I just did.
There's only history.
I just did the day after MLK Day, an episode tying together my perspective on why Trump was so muted on that day. And my thought process was so much, not all of it, because there's an economic piece too, but much of his existence politically is predicated on a reaction to the CRT bullshit, the America hating victimhood mindset. Trump is the American, at least the American white ego in some way. I just say American ego, stepping up and saying, fuck you and fuck that. Okay. And so because so much of Trump he's so psychological. Remember, he says we need Greenland because I think it's important psychologically. I mean, he deals in psychological, which is fascinating, and it's his superpower. And I just said, okay, I guess he's not able to do the nuance and say, like the Rob Reiner thing. He couldn't just make a beautiful announcement about MLK and say he could have and should have and said, but don't go over and don't go beyond. And this is what MAGA is all about. And respectful, one day, honor the guy. This is a legacy worth honoring. could have done that, didn't do it. And so it's just an interesting relationship. And that's all I got.
Look, I have no problem with Martin Luther King. And I know all the knocks on him. I'm fine with it. I don't. That's not my issue. My issue is using it as an excuse for failure and for violence. So
Sure, of course, that's all.
Look, per capita. What's interesting about African immigrants to the United States today? Let's forget about it then. There are plenty of Africans that have come over legally from Africa through the normal immigration process for decades, primarily from Nigeria. That's the biggest country where a lot of Black people come from, but also from the Republic of the Congo and other places, Kenya, other places, Africa, Ghana. Per capita, they make more than white people. That's just a fact. That's an objective fact. Because like all immigrants, because they came here because they wanted to, they bought into the American dream, and it's working for them. And they're not only doing well, they're doing better than the white people. So if there was white privilege, that wouldn't be happening.
That is profound. You nailed it. I mean, really. I mean, think about that.
More than that, the highest earning group in this country is not white people, it's Asians. Asians make more than all of us. Okay.
Fucking Asians.
I love them. Look, they're wonderful Americans. They bring a lot to the table. When I say Asians, I mean Indian Americans and Chinese Americans, and I mean all of Asia.
I was just thinking Chinese, Japanese,
Indian.
Don't forget Indians. I wasn't. I did. I forgot.
Indians are very, very good Americans. And here's the deal, Pickle. They come here to be Americans. They participate in the system. They don't look for an excuse, and they've done better than white people. Not as well, better. So if there is white privilege, it would exist. Okay, that wouldn't be happening.
Yes.
So Black people, here's what I used to tell them in prison, because we didn't discuss that at all, but I'm going to tell you a little prison story. Okay.
And then
folks,
we'll wrap it up.
I disclose this in my book. It's all up front. You can read it. I don't make any secrets about it. But when I was in prison, I used to teach reentry class. So there were classes that before you were released from prison, you have to go through what's called a reentry class to teach you how to be a good human being again and how to bet your money and all. It was a waste of time, and everybody knew. No one was. It was people who didn't care teaching people who didn't care.
Yeah, check in a box.
Right. But the corrections officers that had to teach it knew that I was educated, and I got along well with them. I figured if I was going to have to be there, I was going to make prison my bitch. And one of the ways I did that was to do a lot of favors for everybody. And one of the favors I did was teach this reentry class for the CO that didn't want to teach it. And I did this for like a half a dozen of these guys, and I got favors in return, to be honest. But having said that, not bad favors, not illegal favors, just, I would get my property first when it was time, and I would get my store stuff first when it was time. And I would always,
what do they call it? A conjugal visit?
No conjugal visits, but you can make the best out of anything. And the way I did that was to be nice to everybody and to do favors for everybody inside and the COs the same. Anyway, so I taught this class, and in the part of the reentry curriculum there was a racial tolerance curriculum. And it was the DEI thing on steroids, that you had to go through the book and understand the plight of this and that. It was all bullshit. I took one look at it and I went, none of this is even true. Yeah. So I taught it my own way. And I used to look, now this is just picture this. Picture me in a room of angry Black inmates in prison.
Yeah.
Some of whom who've committed
great audience.
Right. Great audience. Some of whom have committed murder. Some have committed theft.
Yeah.
All of them have committed theft. Most of them with terrible drug problems. All of them have fathered 6,000 illegitimate children. I'm exaggerating. I don't know how many. All of them are irresponsible. All of them have an attitude. There's no exception to it.
Right.
Okay. And you can even tell by the way they sit in their chairs with their arms over their shoulder. Just really, the disdain rolled off of them.
Yeah.
And I'd look them right in the eye, and I'd say, "You guys are fucked in the head." And they'd look at me like, "What?" Now I was an OG. Yeah. Now OG, as you know, stands for original gangster. But I was so fucking thick that I thought it meant old guy until about I was 3 months in prison. I finally figured out it meant original gangster. But anyway, they don't pick on the OGs. So I knew I was going to get a free pass on this. And I said, "You guys are fucked in the head." And I said, "Look, here's the deal. You guys got to behave more like Jews." And then, "Jews? What do you mean, motherfucker?" And I'd say, "Look, here's the thing. Do you know why show business?" And this is really the question I'd ask them. How many of you guys realize that all of entertainment is controlled by Jews? They all knew it. Somehow this was a common fact. It's well known. Jews are all over show business. We do control most of the major studios, most of, all that shit is mostly Jews. There's a reason for that. You've lived in the Los Angeles area. You know that the industry is very Jew heavy. and less now than it used to be, but very Jew heavy,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning. A lot of
Oh,
those
is it
old
really?
stars that you thought
No.
a lot of the old stars you thought were Gentile were actually
Right.
Jews. Like Burt Lancaster is a good example. A Jew changed his name. It was like Jaime Abramowitz or something like that. But
Mhm.
that's what they did in those days to hide that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, why why was that? And the answer is because when we came to this country at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, we weren't allowed into any other businesses. We weren't allowed in banking. We weren't allowed in the big law firms. We weren't allowed in medicine. It all came later.
No.
In those
No.
days, we were shut out. So
Right.
Jews tended to find
What
a
did they
way.
do? So what's the
They
strategy?
invented their own industry. We invented our own industry. So the way I used to put it is find a way and fuck them. You need to, that's what I used to tell them. You black guys need to find a way and fuck them. You need to stop worrying about whether somebody likes you or somebody's a racist. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I know that people I know are anti-Semitic. I don't care. As long as they don't come home with me and try to kill me in my sleep, why do I care if somebody likes a Jew or not? I really don't care. Okay. It doesn't affect my life. It affects their life. I don't care. Okay. But you have to find your own way. And that's what black people need to stop asking for help and start helping themselves. And the way to do that is to find a way. Anyway, it got to be so popular on the prison yard. When I used to walk outside for exercise, black guys would yell at me, "Blue G, find a way and fuck." And it was
That's
really, it was
amazing.
great.
That's actually really sweet. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Look, I mean, it's accountability, individuality, right? I mean, that's it. I mean, these are fundamental reasons why people like myself have been shifting, one of them away from the left. And you are not a MAGA guy, per se, by any stretch of the imagination. You are not a Republican. You're not a traditional Republican. You're a libertarian. You are creative. You are a critical thinker. You are a founder of a movement. You're a flawed human. You're a brilliant guy. You're a talented guy. And so I'm excited for you.
You left out
Look forward.
handsome. You really left out handsome. I'm really, really,
Okay.
I'm really
You're
hurt.
fine.
I'm really
Maybe
hurt.
back
I
in the
think for a
day more.
60-year-old guy, I look pretty good. I'm just
You
saying.
look. Oh yeah, you do. You do.
No, I don't give a shit. I'm just fine.
No, I know.
My head is
So
swelling though.
it's interesting.
With all
But I
these
like.
accolades, my head goes, woo.
No, well, I'm just saying. Look. Well, maybe I shouldn't. So yeah, make sure that doesn't happen. But no, I like your style. You make sense to me. And I like when I say I like your style, I like your politics. And it's interesting. And it's not purely libertarian. So it's not purely like, hey, when I say free market, I'm a libertarian. Maybe I'm just kind of talking as you, whatever, generally. No tariffs, fine, but it doesn't necessarily mean no social safety net. It doesn't necessarily mean wither on the vine. And so it's all about incentives and how to organize and business. And
if a state does a social safety net, a state can't print money, so it can only do so much damage. That's the difference. So a state, when people, for example, Denmark has a very, if you had to pick a country,
it's homogeneous. Yes, I understand.
It's small, it's homogeneous, and they tax the living shit out of their people. Okay, the tax rate in Denmark begins at 35%, no deductions. That's where it starts. Nobody pays zero tax in Denmark. You start at 35%, you go up to as much as I think now it's 56 or 57%, plus you pay a 25% value-added tax, which is a sales tax on everything. So everything you buy in Denmark is 25% more expensive than it has to be. Now, they also don't run a national debt of any consequence. Theirs is in the millions, not the billions.
Right. No, I understand.
It's chump change.
Point made. It's too many. What I see out of you and hear out of you is a smart guy, critical thinker. I like where you're coming from, and you are assessing and understanding complex issues, interlocking with each other. And there's a lot of corrections that need to be made at the very least, even if we don't go all the way to Herby's anti-politism in a radical reset, which is another thing. We've talked about it 10 times. It's fascinating. But even if so I think this is kind of my takeaway as I look at you as a political candidate, okay? Which I'm very excited and happy for you. And I hope you win. And I'm happy to support you. I look forward to doing that. We're not going to get to anti-politism. Maybe it'll be used as a tool to kind of get to know you. But you can give great advice, real world advice about issues and how to solve them. And it's great. So
well, if people will pick up a copy of A Radical Reset, link through my website, Herby Kay.
Herby. Yes, let me plug it for you.
Kay, 4, the number 4, Congress.com. And on there is a white paper on anti-politism. There's a downloadable white paper in a PDF that you can read. It's about 10 or 11 pages explaining anti-politism. Then there's the link to the book, A Radical Reset, which has my policy prescriptions for every major policy issue that we're facing today. And understand that even in the book, I say this, look, this is not me pontificating from on high. This is a place to start a discussion from someplace else. Okay.
Exactly.
One of the reasons that people on the left, for example, will hate the idea of federalism, of devolving the federal, everything, really everything, but what I said earlier about, defense, basically, and interstate crime should be devolved at the state level, all of it.
Yeah.
And what the real objection to that is not that people won't get services, but that the special interests will have to lobby
the managerial class, as Vivek calls it.
Right. Instead of going to one place to steal your money in Washington, and you can steal it hidden in those 5,000-page bills that nobody reads because congressmen spend 90% of their time raising money, and that's not an exaggeration. And they just stuff these hidden things into these bills as payoffs to the political class right and left. Instead of that, they would have to go to 50 states and lobby 50 states individually on every single social program, and they don't have the manpower or the expertise, and so they would fail. And that's what scares them. If you can't go to the trough, and that's the biggest selling point. Look, you talk about real briefly, education. It belongs at the local level where it always was. Okay, it belongs at the local level where it always was. There should be no federal interference in education. What is the Department of Education there for? To steal from. To set up NGOs and get money for and steal from at a national level and impose policies that help the teacher unions at local levels. Screw that. Let them fight it out at the local level. Let the state legislature decide how much money there is. Let the local school board decide what the curriculum is going to be. Stop dictating from the center. Alabama isn't like California. Sorry, it's not. And, for example, I'm a big favor of in favor of reintroducing trades into high school curriculum, wood shop, metal shop thing. But the trade. But in Kansas, you might have a class on plant biology because there's a lot of farming. Where in California, you might have a class on AI. You got to let the local school districts form their own curriculums and their own ideas, and get the government out of it and the teachers, national unions out of it. Let them work on the local level. That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you on that, and we'll pick that up next time, maybe actually, because education is interesting because. Certainly, as with anything, I agree. Local makes sense. At the same time, is there a conversation to be had that could be enticing with funding education and giving everyone massive opportunities to learn, no matter where you are? But and let me end it here. But I guess the counter to that is, look, dude, we already have that with the internet. You don't need to do anything federalized or anything like this.
Any federal program becomes a fraud. All federal programs end in fraud. Look.
Okay.
How did I commit fraud? I committed a fraud.
We gotta lend it here. I gotta go pee.
You gotta go pee? Okay, I was going to tell the whole story, but I'm not going to tell the story. We'll save it. Let me just say this. It's very hard to avoid fraud when nobody's looking over your shoulder and you have access to billions and billions of dollars. It's just, you can talk yourself into believing that what you're doing is for the benefit of everyone when it's really only for the benefit of you. It's a lie that thieves tell themselves. I know. Okay.
Right.
Take it out of the hands of the thieves.
This is actually a perfect place to end it, because I was actually going to say 30 seconds ago, part of your story is, I think, the redemption arc and wanting to, kind of go in and make a difference, make an impact. Your angle is interesting. Take it from the thieves. It's a good pitch, man. I really like it. So,
my friend, the whole time I was committing a crime, I didn't think I was. That's the truth. Now, I see in 2020 hindsight, I absolutely was. I believe my own bullshit. I won't go into it any deeper than that. But you can tell yourself that what you're doing is the right thing when what you're really doing is horrible. Okay?
I think that right there is a really good thing to remember as you're doing interviews and stuff. That is good, man. That's persuasive. That and that is not condemning, and it's not rancorous. So
I admit that I always submit to what I've done. I don't get into explaining all the little details because that's weaseling and I won't do it. But I'm telling you that while I did it, I didn't know I was doing it.
Right.
But I should have known, and I was blinded. I was smart enough to know. You can tell I'm not a dummy. Why didn't I see it? Because I had convinced myself that I was doing it for all the right reasons. That's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There's old sayings become old sayings for good reasons. And that is a real truism. And I see now that what I did was evil. But while I was doing evil, it felt right.
Well, I'm not saying, hey, man, make that the primary focus of your campaign, but
No, but that's how I
if it,
answered the question.
I wouldn't shy from it because,
I never
you
do.
know, it's compelling. No, I know that it's compelling. It's really interesting, man. A pleasure, Herbie, to see you. Any final thoughts? 30 seconds.
Yeah. How long before you two are going to get pregnant? What's your plan?
Well, we're going
How
to do
old's
at
your wife?
least. She's
How old's
actually
your wife?
2 years younger. She's 29. She'll be 30 in July. So
Can I give you some fatherly advice?
don't wait.
Procreate soon.
That's what my
Procreate
best
soon.
friend tells me. He's got 3
Yeah.
kids already.
The sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
My son Julian's 35. They're pregnant for the second. That's the Los Angeles couple.
Yeah.
They're pregnant for
The
the second.
artist.
I'm going to have a grandson. Yay. And they already have a granddaughter.
That's
But
amazing.
Caitlin, my daughter-in-law, is 31, and it was harder this time getting pregnant. My daughter Chloe is trying to get pregnant. She's 31.
31. Interesting.
Yeah, and she's having a harder time. She'll get pregnant, but
Yeah.
the longer there's so many unhappy women today, and I think a lot of that reason is because they put off having children too long. And women are. I'm sorry, this is going to sound old-fashioned and boomery, but women are mothers, and they want
you
to
just
be
ended your
mothers.
campaign.
Yeah, sorry. And children are better off when their mother is there for them, and they're better off when their father is there for them. And the younger you are, the better you are. One of the reasons, not only is it weird and creepy that I wouldn't date a younger woman now, is that I don't want to have children, and a younger woman is going to want to have children because I don't have the energy level for it anymore, and you do. Have children, and since you're a decent human being and your wife is a decent human being, do America a favor and have 3 or more. Just saying.
I like that, man. That's I will definitely be thinking about that at least for the next
And
5
don't get
minutes
divorced
because
under any circumstance. The only grounds for divorce is chronic infidelity or wife beating. Other than that, you hang in there, and you're not in danger of any of that.
If people read your book, which they should, we've already given them ample opportunity to. I know you talk about that a lot. So these are not new concepts for you. You've been thinking about this stuff for a while. Yeah, no, she's amazing. She's amazing.
She's a beautiful girl. I see her on Instagram, and when you're posting, beautiful girl.
Thank you so much, brother. She's a woman of valor. A woman of valor, as they say.
And you done good. So the only thing I have to say is Mazel Tov. For those of you who don't understand that, you'll figure it out.
That means run the world secretly. No.
Yes, but that's the Jewish code. Okay, Brian, press that control code.
Right.
Go get nuts. Seriously, Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov to you.
Thank
Mazel
you,
Tov to your whole family. Terrific.
Thank you so much, Herb. And
Thanks
congrats to you. And so, how old is your first grandchild? 18 months, something like that?
My oldest grandchild was 16 the day before yesterday.
Oh, your oldest grandchild?
My oldest grandchild was 16 the day before yesterday. That's my grandson, Hunter, by my eldest daughter, Lindsay, who's 47. I think
from a previous marriage.
Yeah, she's 47.
From a previous.
She's my daughter by a previous marriage, but we had a blended family. My second wife and I, all the kids are just. We have the world's best blended family, honest to God.
Right.
And there's none of that half brother, half sister bullshit. So my oldest daughters, that's Hunter. And then, so Julian, I have a granddaughter who's 2.5. Her name is Beatrix, like the Queen of Holland with an X. And then, what was it? I think the name they chose for this baby coming out is Dashiell. Which I think is
2.5. So it's going to be 2.5. So the baby will be like 3 or something. It'll be like 3 and 1 type of thing, or 3 and 0. Okay. Got it. I was just kind of getting a picture for myself. Well, congratulations on that. That's amazing. That's awesome.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Yeah. Life is good, and it's good to speak with someone like yourself. It's a blessing that I connected with you, and look forward to continuing to do this.
Peace. Woodstock. Tie-dye.
Yep. Talk to you soon. Have a great weekend, my friend. Yep.
Take care. You too.
Until next time. Bye.
Guaranteed. Bye-bye.